Need another minute
She's
here.
not ready, Jerry.
She's not ready, Jerry.
She's not ready.
Him.
Oh,
Technologies.
technology, I thought she was ready.
Good to go.
She's ready to go now, Mr. President.
Okay. You may take over, Mr. McKim. You're
Thank you,
on
sir.
first.
You called the meeting to order.
Right,
Item number 2 is review of a land development application of Vincentian Collaborative Systems called Terrace Place at Vincentian, located at 9399 Babcock Boulevard. This is a 90-unit independent senior living facility located at the intersection of Coomer Road and Babcock Boulevard, the site of the former Regency Nursing Home. We've had a fair amount of discussion on this. I think there are representatives here tonight, and at least three representatives. Right? Four. Nice to see everyone.
In force.
If you want to, Bruce, why don't you go ahead and
Sure.
orchestrate the 4 guests we have tonight?
Okay, we have with us tonight Nick Vizaka, who's President and CEO of Vincentian Collaborative, Nathan Doherty, who was with Vincentian Collaborative, Edgar Smith, who is the architect on the project, and Rocco Magrino, who is the landscape architect and principal designer of the stormwater and landscaping and layout of the site. So at this point, I will turn it over to them. We have seen this as part of the rezoning. At the public hearing, you got to hear a lot of the details of what was going to be presented if it got approved. Now we're into the final details. They can elaborate on some of what we talked about at the public hearing. And we've actually dug a little bit deeper into the stormwater. How's that for a lead-in?
Very good.
So I'm not sure who's going first.
I'm just, Bruce, I was just going to say thank you, Mr. President, Toby, everybody for being here, and I'm going to turn it over to Rocco Magrino, who worked on the civil engineering portion of the project, and he's going to, again, explain kind of where we are. As Bruce said, we've already gone through the rezoning and land consolidation, so there you have it.
Very good. My name is Rocco Magrino from Morse Associates. Since a lot of this is kind of a repeat presentation, I'll go quickly. Please feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions. It's just only for the sake of brevity, not for detail. There are a few points where we'll stop and kind of go into depth where I understand that folks had some questions or comments. The site is on Babcock, on the corner of Babcock and Coomer Road. It's about 9.5 acres. It is consolidated as of now. It is zoned R6 as currently rezoned in our past approval. We are adjacent to R2 and I districts as well. The site plan as it sits today, we went back and looked at the site plan. There are a few changes from where you may have seen it last. Most notably is that the proposed building once had parking underneath of it. Working with the adjacent property owners, working with the overall construction manager, it was decided to actually remove that parking from underneath the proposed building, which actually brought the building down in height. So we were upwards of 50-some feet. Now the top of the building is at 45 and the eave is at 33. So really lowered that a whole story. A much less dramatic effect on our neighbors, both to the north and to the east. How we sited the building, with that building height, I should say that we are required to have a minimum of 60 feet. The setback to the building, we're over 114 from the natural property line in the center of East Arcadia, which with half of that being actually a private drive, we are well over 104 feet from the what we'll call the effective property line to the building. So really setting that back from the northern neighbor, as well as over 115 feet from our western property line. So again, really trying to find that right spot for the siting of the building. We have buffer yards proposed around where we have our residential neighbors. That includes along Coomer, East Arcadia, the residents to the west and to the south. That's a buffer yard H, which is a 30-foot buffer yard that includes a very dense planting as well as a earthen mound along East Arcadia because of the proximity of the parking. We provided a buffer yard D just in the area along Babcock where we abut the more intense development across the street. The buffer yard H also exists, or is also proposed, I should say, along Coomer, where we have approximately a 50-foot buffer yard that's a little bit more natural, really trying to save some of those legacy trees that are in that area. We are maintaining the existing entrances off of Babcock and Coomer Road. Looking at the traffic study, we're reducing the overall traffic of about 40% reduction, I should say. That's in the average daily traffic. We do have AM and peak reductions a little bit different than that. Peak AM is about 45% reduction and a 20% reduction in the PM peak. That's mostly due to the programming from, I think it was 143 beds to 90 units. So, and it's a different use, so it's more of an independent living instead of more of a nursing home. Also, there's only 4 employees in this proposed facility. I think there was over 240 for the 277 for the previous facility. We are providing 137 parking spaces on site, which is what is required per zoning. Quite candidly, we don't think operationally we need all of those. That's something I think we may like to explore, grade it out, but just not pave it. It'll actually reduce a lot of impervious, but I think that's a discussion we can have at a later date. We do provide for circulation around the building. We have access for fire trucks. There's our dumpster in this corner. You'll see in the next more engineering diagrams that we show that circulation. And also, just as a side, we do provide for loading at the main entrance. We don't think that's going to be a daily occurrence, but rather bi-weekly or scheduled as needed. Before I get into the stormwater, just a few other notes. We are providing all native species in the planting buffer yards and on site. That includes dense, high-level and low-level shrubs. And we're currently coordinating the lighting design for all cutoff fixtures in the parking lot, as well as some simple bollard lighting and really low-impact lighting within the courtyard. We don't envision any uplighting other than maybe some landscape trees, just to really give it that nice residential feel that you may see throughout the township. From a stormwater management perspective, we have looked at this in several ways. We analyzed it with 4 point of interests: point of interest 1, point of interest 2, 3, and 4 respectively. Point of interest 1 is at the corner of Babcock Road where the property line ends. That's actually a location where we currently have a discharge. Point of interest 2 runs to our southern neighbors who have a frontage on, I believe it's Whitley. Every time I do that, it's going to, that's perfect, okay. On Whitley. We have another point of interest here at the corner of Coomer and East Arcadia, and then our minor point of interest at the corner of East Arcadia in our western property line. We had 3 ways to combat stormwater or to actually deal with it. As the situation stands right now, the majority of the existing site had been paved. I'll just jump back to this property line. You can see the old Regency. The majority of this area all came down into point of interest 2. There's also a natural spring here which saturated the soil, really taking up the capacity of the topsoil and the in situ soil to capture any rainwater that may occur. Thirdly, there's a lot of pavement here. So what we did is we looked at the site as it exists today, but ignored all of this pavement, so that our pre-development condition was meadow, anywhere there was not woods. So we have woods and meadow essentially. That's the bar we're trying to hit from a discharge perspective in the post condition. So once we install our stormwater BMPs, we want this to look no greater than a meadow and a wooded area. Also, we looked at the springs and saturated soil here in the back. To facilitate that, we installed an underground trench that's about 6 feet deep, has an impermeable liner filled with aggregate and a trench and a pipe at the bottom, perforated pipe, to actually convey subsurface water from any springs or any other perched water we receive here and bring it down into the pond. That cuts off that subsurface drainage that was getting down to point of interest 2 on Whitley. That'll actually facilitate this to be a dry area during when it is dry, so that when it does rain, there is capacity within the soil to capture and provide for the vegetation. That's more of a normal cycle. We also have a surface cutoff trench that captures any water that runs off the surface, brings that to the surface of the trench, and puts that in the pond. That pond is designed to be 4 feet deep, permanent pool, and there are two benches in it. When I say a bench, I mean that there's actually a 4-to-1 slope and then a 7.5-foot bench. And that 7.5-foot bench is approximately 5%, which is less than an ADA ramp. Then we have another 4-to-1 slope and another aquatic bench at 5% for 7.5 feet. I mention this because there's been a lot of discussion about the safety of this particular pond. In addition to that effective grading, and we will also have vegetation around the pond that'll be more, how can I say, natural in nature. So it's not going to be manicured. Bottom line is, in my opinion, you're going to want to have to get wet in this pond. You're going to want to have to go swimming to get down in that pond. Someone's going to have to want to effectively try to get into the pond. It's not an accidental thing. One question came up about the discharge from the pond here. We designed this discharge. We have a 30% reduction in the 25-year storm. And that's from, the reduction is from a meadow condition on site. So as it stands right now, there's a certain amount of flow that's coming off that site. We have a 2-tiered reduction. Our first reduction is to take it back to meadow. So we reduce the flow coming out of this particular outfall back to a meadow condition. From there, we have another 30% reduction once we install our permanent stormwater management BMP. And at that location, we have a very specifically designed outfall. That outfall is an end wall from our pipe. We then have a rip-wrap apron, which slows the water down. And then we have a gabion basket check dam, which allows water to actually stop, percolate through the gabion basket, slow down almost completely, and then enter into the PennDOT drainage system, which is a gutter, which is constructed directly along Babcock Boulevard, virtually stilling the water. In times of high flow, 100-year storms, that gabion basket will allow the complete 100-year storm to fall over top of it, kind of most akin to an infinity edge swimming pool. So it's a weir, essentially, and that will fall over, bringing it slowing it as much as possible to eliminate any issues with Babcock Boulevard, excuse me. That's our design for point of interest 1. Very careful, very thought through, very deliberate design of this particular outfall. Point of interest 2, we're reducing almost 30% of the outfall, or the flow in the post-construction 25-year storm. That's by reduction of the area going towards it, so that's a direct reduction of flow going to the neighbors at Whitley. We also have an infiltration or rain garden up here at point of interest 3 that discharges to an existing inlet here that gets in the municipal storm system and then conveyed downstream. And lastly, we diminish point of interest 4, the drainage area to it, greatly, and we reduce the overall discharge to that particular sheet flow, we'll call it gutter, quite significantly. In addition to that, we are meeting all township standards, all county standards, all DEP standards with the design of each one of our BMPs, the pond, our rain garden at this location, and here. We've also, as a comment from the town engineer, provided 4 bays at all the entrances to the pond. So there's a 4-bay here and a 4-bay here.
Describe a 4-bay.
A 4-bay is the best way I can describe it is a mini pond that sits right before the overall BMP, the overall stormwater pond, and that's intended to capture, still the water during very small events and capture the particulate matter or the suspended solids. It's essentially a small pond with a weir, and that water comes in, stops, and then bleeds through that, and it just filters out any sediment, debris, what have you. And that just lengthens the life of the pond.
How large are those?
They're actually 10% of the total volume, broken up between the flows coming into each. So the total volume of this pond will have 10% spread across both. I believe it's a 66-33 split based upon percentages. So to give you a cubic foot, I think that is about 30 cubic feet, and that's probably about 12, roughly.
Did you say the parking was previously underneath the building
It was.
and that was changed?
Yes, it was.
Why would you change that?
We looked at it from a height perspective from the building, as well as a cost perspective. There was some things we want to do outside, including landscaping, courtyards, and also the height adjacent to East Arcadia. We wanted to really bring that down in some lighter slides. We were getting a lot of comments from the neighbors about what the building facade looked like. So we want to kind of bring that down and have that be below the tree profile line from the view shed.
But you doubled your impervious surface.
We
And
have
now you
increased-
have elderly people walking out in the rain and the snow without cover. Having that underneath was such a great idea, because then they didn't have to walk out to their cars in bad weather and have that danger.
It's a very good point. I think from an operational standpoint, as Mr. Vizaka can talk about, is one of the things that they're finding in their other developments is that there's a lot of folks that live here don't have cars. They're using the shuttle service, Zipcar, Uber, which is, I think there's an Uber specifically for advanced age personnel that they're utilizing.
So I can address that a little bit more. So when we looked at it,
Could you
Yeah.
either
Yeah.
Microphone.
absolutely. So when we looked at this, a couple things. We would have put about 90 spots under the building at about 40,000 per spot. That's about $3.5 to $4 million we added to the project. Adding that on then to the overall cost of the project and then passing that on to the residents that live here took us completely out of the range of where we wanted to be in terms of monthly rent for these folks, number one. Number two, our current villas, we have apartments there, we have 40 apartment units, and we have 45, I think, parking spaces under the building. We currently have 6 cars under there. We've done a lot of research with a lot of other facilities across the state and locally even, Cumberland Woods, and we find that within 2 years, nobody uses the parking. They either get rid of the car or they use the shuttle service. We've been in contact with Zipcar. They're agreeable to putting at least 1 car, if not 2, on site for our residents and for folks in the community. We've talked to Uber. We've also reached out to Tesla about potentially putting a charging station there for electric cars. So there's a lot of good things. Now, that being said, future potential is if we do find that folks do want to use their cars and park, we've been in contact with the state of Pennsylvania, looking at doing covered parking over that surface and using solar panels on top to generate energy for us. But we feel that even with 137, as Rocco alluded to earlier, we think that's a lot. We're seeing even in our own facilities now, the cars are gone, and we will have a shuttle there for them to take them anywhere they really want to go.
Nick, while you're standing, if I
Yeah.
may, Mr. Chairman, the business about the 137 spaces, and we have a provision in our ordinance that you're probably aware of that
Yes.
allows reservation of graded land, you use that term, graded land, to avoid impervious if it's unnecessary. And we have on several occasions, or maybe even, I'd say more than several, permitted that, understanding that should an area be reserved, it would have to be invoked if the parking was necessary. And you had commented that at another time. Actually, I think tonight would be the time to broach that subject and to pursue if, with the numbers in your studies and our traffic engineers have examined as to what numbers would be necessary. The ordinance says 137. You can't get away from that. But what would be necessary to pave, and to follow up on Ms. Zachary's point, so that it would be, if the excess impervious pavement is not necessary, let's find out what is. Do you have a number by chance, Bruce, or do you folks have a number that you know that you need to have?
We did a study, our parking ordinance is based on a traffic study. And so the 1.5 per unit is based on a traffic study. So we already have our traffic information. Now, I believe that they have actual data beyond what we projected that may be more beneficial.
Yeah, I think when we looked at this, Bruce and Toby, one of the things that we said was, obviously 137 is high, but we agree. We talked to Edgar and the architects to say, we'd put a spot aside that if we do ever need it, and I think the number that we came up with is closer to 100 to 105. And that would allow for not only the residents, but also visitors, if we had visitors. I think another point to bring up, as Ms. Zachary said, these folks are going to be getting wet. So we thought about that logistically, and we are going to offer a valet service so they can pull up. And there are two entrances, and I think Edgar can get to this a little bit more. There's an entrance right where Rocco has, and there's another one on the northern side for folks that park up there. So yeah, it's a concern because obviously you got to keep it clean wintertime and it's wet. But when we had two separate focus groups with potential residents of this facility, and just so everybody knows, we have about 200 names now on a waiting list for 90 units. And we asked them, what do you want? What do you want to see? And when we told them, that the underground parking was expensive, what's more important to you? An outdoor area that's inviting or underground parking? And we had 95% response that said an outdoor area. We're not going to have a car anyway. No need for it. It's okay. So we went with what we were being told and the studies that we've seen across the state. That's where we ended up, where we did.
If your data is, the data that Nick's talking about, Bruce, has that been reviewed by our traffic
No.
engineer? Can we, I would think that would be valid and valuable to have. And then you would show us, if you're going to grade that area, I'm just going to take a guess, right along there, you could, if you were to wipe out that parking and have that landscaped, lightly landscaped for at least the time being lawn or something like that.
It'd be long.
Lawn. So that would be the area that would be, I would guess, most suitable, unless it would run afoul of your stormwater management. I don't think it would. Probably would help.
It would enhance it.
It would enhance it, sure. So,
And if you took those dollars and then moved them to this other side and had covered,
Well, and I think that was always in the
I mean,
plan to have
just-
we didn't want to put those in, again, because if you look at the aesthetics of it, we want it more park-like. If it wasn't necessary, we weren't going to put it in. So we were going to wait the first couple of years, but have the plan in there that if we needed it, yes, we would incorporate them and have it blend in. And in fact, the covered parking, what our thought was, Toby, where you had just mentioned, that's where, when you look at the sun and the orientation of the building, if we did do the solar panels above that would be the best place.
I would suggest that it's not an all or nothing either.
Sure.
If you're thinking 100 to 105, and the ordinance says 137, I don't know how many spaces you have along there, Rocco?
I would say that's probably about
30.
28, 30 spaces.
Okay,
I can get
so
your firm count by the end of the meeting.
Maybe you reserve that, and then if it turns out to be 110, whatever, it's just sort of
Right.
a common sense approach. I think that's the whole purpose of that being in the ordinance for these kinds of discussions.
No, absolutely.
Worst thing you can do is build a new facility with not enough parking.
No, but if you have the space there, and if it's required, and we have a trigger in the ordinance that says that, we
And the-
see you overflowing, we see people parking along Babcock
Oh,
Boulevard.
absolutely.
Okay, and it sounds like it's also obviously pretty market-driven, as the covered parking and solar panels would be too.
Absolutely.
and they're not losing the space, they can always come back and put it in.
Correct.
It's not like they're selling the land. It can be green, and then you can come back if you need it.
How would you feel about reserving funds or posting a bond that would say, if needed, within X number of years? And we've done this in different ways. I mean, it just makes sense to have something, depends on, you kind of have to handle this on a case-by-case basis depending on the use. But the ordinance allows for us to be creative, if you will, about these kinds of things so that you have that tool available to you. So I think if we just flesh that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think what would make sense is just a quick plan. This is obviously our maximum build-out from a parking potential. Here's 137 spaces. So we can identify area A, area B, that make the most sense from an economic standpoint to go back in. I'm not going to pave, willy-nilly in this back corner because we need access for fire, we need access for garbage trucks. But we can identify this is area A, this is area B, that, you know, perhaps if we need 30 more spaces, we'll pave area A. If we need that additional 10 more spaces after that, we can pave area B. We can have that staggered approach if that works well.
More than happy to do that. Put funds aside, absolutely.
Men are yours if you don't need them. It just,
We'll provide a path on how we'd like to see that broken up as far as initial construction with the initial parking spaces, then in area A and or in area B.
I think if you would describe that to us, it'll help expedite rather than us trying to invent that. I mean, you're all the way down the line on your plan. You know,
Sure.
you know your work, what you're doing here, so I think help us out with that.
Question here when you get, when he's done.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Did you mention, or is there any plan for covered parking spaces in the paved area?
There's no plan on the table right now for covered spaces. However, there is an opportunity in the future to perhaps provide covered parking with solar panels on top if that's something that is meeting the needs of the residents.
Well, obviously, the solar panels, the purpose of that is obvious, but what about the covered, what would the concept be for the covered parking areas?
I think we did a few studies on that. I'm not sure where we landed in here.
Yeah, so we did look at it. There are off-the-shelf systems that you can purchase that actually mount into the ground that almost have a cantilevering effect that can cover 1, 2, 4, 6 spaces. And there's a cost associated with that. That's something that we have not pursued any farther at this point, but we do have a system.
But some of the, only some of the spaces would have a cover over
That's correct.
near the building, I'm assuming, so people could go from the car to the...
What we initially thought, and use that pointer there are systems that potentially the center portion, this is a double bay system, there's parking on either right and left. We looked at a center structure system that potentially could cover some of those parking spaces. We also looked at possibly single bay that could cover these. We have to be very sensitive, obviously, to the local jurisdiction, local requirements, but this center portion was the one that we thought would make the most sense. Especially if there's 91 units, I think the percentage at the other villa is 6 per 45, so this would probably be 12 per 90 total cars in the end.
I think to kind of put at least, not a line, but at least put out a number, if you will. I think evidence shows that in the other developments that VCS has, that there's probably less than 1 per unit. You have 91 units, plus 4, I believe, employees at this time. That's approximately 95 spaces that we would envision would meet the complete capacity, correct me if I'm wrong, of this particular development, just so we're all, where it comes from, area A, area B, but I think the number that we would feel comfortable with, and whether or not that would be supported, we can provide you calculations and studies to show that, and take you over and look at your other developments that will show how many parking spaces are in there right now based upon the plan.
And that's where we came up with the 105 to 110, because even as you said, 95, but then there are visitors. There are times when we're gonna have folks there and you wanna have events, but I think even that 1 for every unit, I can honestly tell you, is a lot.
What are you gonna do on holidays?
Well, currently at the villas, when we have holiday gatherings, many of the folks actually leave and go to their children or they go home. So we do have, let's say, a Thanksgiving party that somebody rents the villa for. It's been more than adequate. You know, we'd have 10 to 15 visitors. But for the most part, these folks go to their families on holidays. That's what we've seen in the last 8 years. And let's not discount also in the villas, we have 8 folks now that are snowbirds. So in the wintertime, they're gone. They're down south.
And although we can't approve unless it has something to do with the zoning, or it's a structural, something that needs Bruce or his people to approve it structurally, but at least get a look at what these assembled units look like.
Yes.
It sounds like you've taken a lot of attention to the stormwater and with all the ponds and everything. But with this increase of all these parking spaces, have you thought about doing some pervious parking so that we have less runoff to begin with? Hopefully these will all be adequate, but how about?
We certainly looked at a pervious pavement as an opportunity for a BMP, for a stormwater BMP. What we looked at as what would be the best BMP for this site was a series of infiltration areas as well as this wet pond. It could have been designed as a dry pond. We're actually putting more resources into making a wet pond for not only the aesthetic purposes, but the ecological value, and also pervious pavement doesn't actually, it has some issues with freeze thaw in recent years. So our thought was to, if we're going to pave it, let's use a traditional asphalt material, but then provide a more robust downstream BMP from the treatment train standpoint. So we have the vegetated channel, which is going to remove suspended solids, nitrogen, etc. We have the offline, to get very in-depth, this entire parking area and roof drains come into the vegetated channel. There is a diversion dike at this location which diverts off of essentially the first flush into this rain garden. Any additional water spills over the weir back into the channel and then continues down to the forebay. So it truly is that treatment train or champagne glass effect where we're treating every inch of runoff as it comes off with the highest and best practice we can. Infiltrating salt and any type of chemicals and oil, what have you, that lands directly on the pavement does not seem to be that advantageous, at least from a stormwater perspective.
And now, at the end of the pond, you say there's an open ditch on Babcock.
There is, there's an open ditch that discharges directly to what's actually a paved shoulder in the PennDOT right-of-way. So it's, the asphalt ends, there's a concrete shoulder and a curb at that location.
And that's gonna eliminate the water going on to Babcock Boulevard?
The shoulder will convey it down from Babcock, from our site down Babcock and into the inlet at the corner of Whitley. Our outfall design will stop that water in its tracks and let it filter out very slowly through the gabion basket, which is essentially a metal milk carton with rocks in it, so it kind of filters through very quickly, or very slowly, excuse me, and then any additional flow can fall over that. So, long story short is it stills it, stops it, and allows it to continue down and change direction down in the gutter pane. So we're not going to have a hose effect where we're blasting water out on Babcock. That was the design intent.
So yes or no, is the water going onto Babcock?
Yes, the water going on to the right of way of Babcock Boulevard.
We're not concerned about the cold weather and the ice?
There is no adequate there's no other outfall location. This is where the water goes right now. We're reducing that water 30% after we reduce it to pre-development levels. So we're reducing probably half of the water that discharges there now, so we're decreasing the rate at which it flows out, and we're stopping it at that right-of-way line.
That's a 100-year flood overflow, correct?
And there is a 100-year overflow.
That's a
Yes.
100-year overflow.
But isn't that the one that floods over all the time and has ice all the time on it in the winter?
I don't know if it's all the time, but periodically, yes.
Yeah, that's what my
Periodically, yes,
concern is.
we have problems with that.
But if that's coming off that property, then shouldn't they be responsible for making
Well,
sure it doesn't come onto Babcock?
It sounds like what he's trying to do is reduce and control so that for the most part that stays. I don't think any of us should expect, I don't think you're expecting of yourselves a guarantee that only, I don't know what storm level, I think you said 100-year,
Correct.
but if you're saying at the 100-year level is when we're going to start getting water on Babcock Boulevard, it's going to stay in the shoulder, anything less than what is called, well, let's call it a 1% storm, because it's a 100-year storm, everybody thinks, well, I had my 100-year storm, so I have another 100 years, so got to get away from that.
Right. We're bringing the water to the property line at far less, it's a lot slower, and it's controlled far greater than it is right now. Absolutely.
I think the point is, and I think, just put it in layman's terms, I think, because I've heard it, and I've heard this over and over, but, and trust me, I've seen it from a budget perspective where this is well over $1 million just for the stormwater, but, as Rocco is saying, if we did nothing with this, or we go back to the way it was, Regency, yes, you're gonna create a mess. It's gonna be like it always was. Rocco's point is, the way we're controlling the water and the way the water's coming down, we're talking about 30% less than is currently there. And that's the best we can do, other than literally taking this site back to when it was pre-development anything, and just leave it a complete meadow with no building, no nothing on it, just grass.
And from a
and natural.
stormwater, excuse me for interrupting, from a stormwater perspective, you are doing that.
We're taking it back to
Correct.
meadow.
So the water coming off of there would be as if it was a meadow. Rocco, if you could go back and show council what the existing site looks like, I think that will answer the questions. Some of the questions, yeah, the next thing.
Yep.
Right there, you can see where that's all impervious. Right through here is already impervious. And we're eliminating that impervious surface, and we're eliminating this impervious surface.
Right.
In fact, the entire site impervious surface is reduced.
And I apologize for not having the number, but we will be discharging at this location 30% less than the rate which would have discharged from this site if it was all meadow. We're doing everything we possibly can do at this location. Water will drain to Babcock with whatever anything is done at this location. It's impossible to
When you
not
say
have
to
water.
the Babcock, you mean it will
On the
find
road.
its way
Along
into
the shoulder.
On the shoulder.
into the ditch that's going down parallel with the road?
Correct, into the shoulder, yes.
So you contemplate it's going to go flooding out onto the street?
Absolutely not. We're trying to still that water as much as possible with gabion baskets, rock protection outfall, and stop it so that it matriculates very slowly out of the outfall location.
So if the plan works, you will not have created a condition that causes, that encourages icy surfaces in cold weather on the street itself?
Correct. We will not be encouraging icy surfaces. We will not be making it, we will be making it better than it is today. Water will freeze. There will be water in the shoulder there. I can't make claims that I'm going to make that's not going to be the case. But it is quite candidly the best that anyone's going to be able to do.
Rocco, let me try to understand a little bit better. You said that it is 30% less than if it was meadow. It's greater than 30% than it is now.
Correct. Absolutely.
So do you have a percentage of?
It's probably about 45-50%.
Okay.
I will get that for the next meeting. I will have that percentage. I'm disappointed I don't have it now, but
Bruce, where do we stand with PVE's response to all this?
They said that they could write as soon as we get the NPDES permit, which had been submitted probably 2 months ago, or close to 2 months ago, we could write a letter of consistency with our stormwater ordinance.
When would that be relative to the requested approval?
Well, typically, we don't have the NPDES until after approval.
Right.
So they applied for it, I think, well, I'm sure you wanted it a month ago.
we received 4 comments from the Allegheny County Conservation District. To sign and seal the plan, provide a consistency letter, change a label, and check a CN value, which we have done.
Calculations are borne out?
Yes. Everything was good. The only thing outstanding is NPDES.
Well, the calculations is what I was asking about.
If there's no more comments on the, well, I'll fly forward here. If there's no more comments on the stormwater, I can jump into just a little bit more brief description.
Real quick
Yes, sir.
before you go ahead, I see there's no sidewalks on there. Have they been calculated in for the impervious surface or even consideration? Or
Yes, they have been.
Okay.
Who's gonna talk about the sidewalks? You gonna talk about the sidewalks? Edgar, you wanna talk about the sidewalks now?
I can talk about the sidewalks.
Since it was brought up.
We're
Yeah,
requesting a
absolutely.
modification to not construct sidewalks at this time. It would actually be a deferral of the construction of sidewalks along Babcock and Coomer Road, with residents being of advanced age and there being no definable street grid to connect to. We find it would be actually an unsafe condition to construct sidewalks and give that sense of there's going to be something down here to connect to. In the future, if there are connections, I know, Bruce, we talked about various opportunities and what may happen to Coomer and Babcock intersection. At that time, we could certainly construct sidewalks.
Would that be put in writing?
I think much like you brought up, Toby, about the parking, one of the things that, when we've looked at this, especially on Babcock, the topography of the land there, even if we were to put a sidewalk in front of our property, it would be a sidewalk to nowhere until that's taken care of. We're more than happy to put money aside, whether that's in a bond, to say, yes, when there's a master plan and we're ready to go, we, Vincentian Collaborative, will put the sidewalks where necessary. But right now, like I said, on Babcock, you all know that the hillside, the topography, the utility lines that are there, we can put it in front of ours, but it'll end right there. There's no, it's a sidewalk to nowhere, essentially.
What happens is, once we get past Whitley, it's virtually impossible at this time to put a sidewalk in. We do have a plan for when the hospital redevelops, they will be putting a sidewalk in along this down to Cumberland, and there are crosswalks at Cumberland. And McCandless Crossing is going to put in the ramp from Cumberland up to the existing sidewalk that was put in for the church. So there are future plans to put the sidewalk here. That can be done. Once we're past Whitley, just south of here, its topography presents a major problem for sidewalks.
So how about on Coomer Road then? If they put the sidewalks in on Coomer, then it would hook up with Passavant, and then that would continue on.
Crosswalk at Coomer, Bruce, Coomer?
Well, the holdup there is, and I guess I can say this publicly now, we talked at one point with the hospital, I believe those plans have at least been temporarily abandoned, and we talked about putting a through road in, and this would become a signalized intersection. That's gone away, but the sidewalk hasn't gone away. The only way I'd feel safe putting a sidewalk in here is if there was what do you call it? I guess a three-way stop.
I would think that a crossing here, given the geometry, could be a challenge.
Yeah, it'd have to be a
Well,
three-way
That's
stop.
for sure. And there would have to be some kind of control there, a stop or a signal. That would be unsafe otherwise.
Doesn't
Are
our
you
ordinance
suggesting-
require sidewalks for all new construction?
It does, and that's why they're bringing this up in this context that there's a modification that could be granted, but you have to weigh the exact factors that they're talking about. So the opportunity to connect, Bruce has confirmed, and as I recall, we've all driven on Babcock. When Bruce is there, he looks at it with administrator's eyes, so I agree with him that that's a tough segment from when you leave this property down to Whitley and down to the intersection of Cumberland and Babcock. What's the status again of the hospital sidewalk, Bruce?
Whenever they do a new development, we put them on notice that the
They're
next
required.
time they do a development, they will put a sidewalk in.
If we do grant relief from sidewalks, we put our usual clause in there.
Yeah, it's not a waiver.
Right.
And that's not what you're suggesting.
No, not at all.
It's a delay subject to. We're gonna need a couple of subject twos, and that is safe passage across Coomer and across Babcock. And there's another contingency, which is what Bruce is talking about, what the hospital's gonna do. And all of this falls into, we have targeted this area for master planning for sidewalk. In fact, the Vincentian Collaborative Services is committed, and it's part of the approval you got for your campus
Correct,
up at the convent, to run a sidewalk along your frontage.
correct.
So we have plans on filling the gaps, creating a sidewalk district along the rest of Babcock where there is no new development proposed.
Right.
So that's where, we have funds available that we've held in our transportation district fund for this purpose, is seed money. It's not enough to buy a whole lot of sidewalks, but it'd be a decent local match for some of the grant possibilities, intermodal grants that PennDOT has. And we've been keeping our eye on that because there's a missing link of sidewalk on Duncan Avenue, and this would be a missing link here. So it sounds like you're looking to set up a mechanism so you could be a part of this master plan.
Correct. In no way are we asking for a waiver. We would love nothing more than to be able to offer the residents that live here the ability to walk the McCandless Crossing. I
Sure.
think who wouldn't? Right? I completely agree. So absolutely not a waiver.
I would think this would be a great thing to talk about when we're, one aspect of our comprehensive plan for connectivity within the town, and how we may be able to connect you with McCandless Crossing. And we already have a plan for connecting Vincentian Villas to McCandless Crossing. So we want this to be connected, because we know that these folks are gonna want to walk.
In your financing, are you obtaining funds for the sidewalk?
That's all included, yes. When we did that, our total amount includes the sidewalk.
Okay, I would suggest then somehow you have provision to reserve that, because a bond, to me, a bond isn't gonna work for sidewalk. That's not gonna pay for all the sidewalks.
Sure.
There's not gonna be some legal trigger bill, I think, for, if it's something like, a bond is here to protect us, and it's an insurance policy. I think we need more than insurance policy.
Absolutely.
So if Passivant says in a year, we're ready for our project, then we can just call you and say, we're ready for your sidewalks, and you just put them in?
Absolutely.
That's how that goes?
With all due,
With
you
all
know,
the process.
Of course,
Yeah.
of course,
Right.
but that's all you have to do.
That's
You
the
don't
trigger.
have to wait for, oh, we're gonna do it in 5 years, or 10 years, or when we get around to it.
in addition to Passivant, town of McCandless obtains intermodal funds from PennDOT, because we're talking about a pretty big number here to run all these sidewalks. They already have reserves for the collaborative. But yes, I think there's several things we should list that any one of them could trigger it.
We have a standard ordinance, standard clause that we put in all this.
We do.
Just
Yeah.
That
those-
when we want sidewalks, they go in, council wants sidewalks.
Okay,
Yeah, and-
that's what I'm
It's
asking.
upon demand.
And the drawings are done, they are completed, so it's, to your point, it's, if you say, hey, we're ready to go, we're ready to go.
It's written on the deed, or on the plans, and,
When did the sidewalk ordinance go in?
pardon?
When did the sidewalk ordinance go in?
It's a
1975.
permission to modify the installation.
Why don't all the new houses on Coomer have them?
The houses on Coomer, believe it or not, the sidewalk is part of the road. There is a 4-foot wide berm that was paved, and I was surprised the county repaved it. So there's a 4-foot wide sidewalk berm along
Looks
the
weedy.
front of these houses.
What else do we need to see?
Well, Edgar probably wanted to present the building. The lighting meets the requirements, the parking spaces all met the requirements, they were the required sizes. The landscaping, who's talking about the landscaping? The landscaping is very detailed. I think we went over that pretty heavily at the public hearing.
We did.
Um,
We are providing recreational spaces in the courtyard. There's a walking loop, a very active and passive space, a great lawn, fire pit, patio, very respectful of the neighbors, trying to keep it behind everything and actually make a nice space that's lit by the sun for our residents.
Okay, well, have we covered what we need to cover at this point? Is there anything
I
else?
think the architect wants to show, Edgar wants to show,
Yeah, we can just show a few more images
he
here.
wants to see a couple of images, Mr. Chairman.
So, thank you. Just to follow back up, just going back to the plan that Rocco had here. Stay put. One more time. All right, so the main entrance to the building, this is really the public side of the building. There's a glass facade on the first floor, which is our multi-purpose space. We have a little canopy here for drop-offs. We also have another entry into the building off the north side of the building, so anybody that parks on the north side has easy access, and it's secured access into the building on both sides. This is obviously the private side of the building, which is more of a private courtyard, which Rocco was describing. The building itself is a double-loaded corridor, so we have 3 stories. The first level has some of our public amenities. We have like a lobby space, multi-purpose room. Some of the mechanical spaces are on that first floor. But we also have these, on the first floor, we have garden apartments. So first floor apartments that face north, garden apartments that face southeast, garden apartments that face northwest on the inside courtyard, and south garden apartments. So you have a little patio space, and you have a little sliding door, so you have some daylight. The second and third floor of this project are, again, single-bedroom units with a den. And so this is that glass entry that we were talking about. There's a little signage here. You can see what we call it Terrace Place. Up above, everybody has a little balcony and a bedroom window. So each unit is a very tight, about 900 square feet. We have a living space. We have a kitchen. We have a bathroom and a powder room, as well as laundry in every unit. So these are very nice units. The exterior material that we're using is a cementitious siding that has integral color, so it can stand the test of time. We're using an asphalt shingle, downspouts that are exposed. But for the most part, the building now, I think this is about 33 feet to the eave, 45 feet to the top of the 412 pitch roof. And this elevation is kind of kinked. This is where the angle of the building starts to fall back, fall away from you. But this is that front entry piece, which we will hopefully you'll see people doing yoga, people playing cards at certain nights of the week. In terms of lighting, the only exterior lighting we have, we'll have a wall sconce for each unit on the balcony, which the unit owner or the unit tenant will be able to control. And really a lot of this image is really skewed because you're going to have a lot of landscape. And that landscape, I'm going to go back to that first image that we had in the opening. If I can get there fast enough. Just ornamental plantings, trees will be out in front. The idea is that this is part of the gateway into North Park. We're really trying to be part of the vernacular architecture in the region and just trying to keep it simple, but really having a long-standing building. This is a 50-plus year building, so if there are any other questions.
If I may add to your comment that you just made, it was stated that at the request of the sisters, the plan was developed with the idea of saving as many existing trees as was possible. And that is the sisters' philosophy, that's what they wanted to do. So Edgar helped design the building and Rocco helped design the site plan to fit everything within the trees that they felt that they could save.
If you go on site, you'll see tags around the trees that the owner had a local arborist come out and identify the trees that were staying. So if you see people switching the tags, they're putting them on the wrong trees. You got to make sure you're saving those trees. So that's all I had.
These are rental units, right?
They are the rental units. That's correct.
Anything else from concession? You guys are, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the next item, which is item number 3, review a subdivision lot line revision application for the Philip F. Muck lot line revision plan by adding approximately 20 feet to the side yard of 9731 of Harmony Road and removing approximately 20 feet from the rear yard of 785 Woodland Road. It's really a pretty simple concept. They're taking the 20 feet off the side yard, as it says here, and then rather adding 20 feet on the side yard and then removing it again. It's just shifting it. And Bruce, you want to
Sure, I'll
comment on that?
Yeah, the property location is here. This is the Ingomar Fire Station. If you're traveling west on Ingomar, turn right, it goes back to Woodland. So there are 2 properties back there. We have with us tonight John Schleicher, who is the engineer representing Mr. Muck. Mr. Muck had a acute episode which prevented him from coming to the Planning Commission and to tonight's meeting. So John was forced into action. So anyways, this is Woodland, this is McCutcheon, this is Harmony. Mr. Muck lives right here. He purchased this property with the idea that he wanted to save a group of trees which is located right in this area. He had already torn down this building here. There were 2 houses. This is non-conforming structures. There were 2 houses and a 4-car garage on there. This house was just recently, the plan was developed. This house was demolished. The garage is going to remain and this house is going to remain. So the proposal is, as Mr. McKim stated, is to remove this lot line. This is the existing lot line and extend it to this point. So the new lot will be here. It meets all the R1 requirements. There's room to build a build a house, should all this be removed. Would necessitate facing McCutcheon, which should not be a problem. And then this becomes a side yard, this becomes a side yard, and this becomes a front yard, this becomes a rear yard. But it can be done. It meets the 20,000 square foot requirement for a lot. So basically, Mr. Muck wanted to preserve the trees and wanted to control what's done with this property, so he purchased it. That's it.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I wanted to say, Brian Moore pointed out that there are two tanks, caps, lids here. John believes, and I concur, that they were are some part of our sump requirements that we have for areas that are not do not have regional stormwater or planned stormwater. So Mr. Muck or Mr. Muck's previous property owner put an addition on and did a lot of extra paving back there. So John, did you find anything else about that?
Just the fact that that is in fact a rock-filled sump,
Okay,
to the best of our knowledge. Yeah.
and those are the cleanouts.
Correct. Access.
That's it.
Okay. There's
That's
nothing.
all of our requirements and have been reviewed by the town engineer.
Thank you, Bruce. Moving to item number 4, discuss the request of McCandless Township Sanitary Authority, MTSA, that the town approve its Act 537 Sewage Facilities Plan Special Study for the Pine Creek wastewater treatment upgrade to be submitted to the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. Approval of this study requires the adoption of a resolution by town council. Representatives of MTSA will be on hand to review their study. I see some
We have
representatives.
with us tonight Dennis Blakely and Mr. Youngblood from the Sanitary Authority. And Dennis can explain what we have to do, okay, and what they're doing.
A lot of you guys have been to see the Pine Creek plant over the years. It was originally built in 1975, upgraded again in 1989. It's actually located in Hampton Township. It's probably half mile to 3/4 of a mile outside of McCandless. What we're looking to do is to upgrade the plant to meet the current requirements from DEP for discharge into Pine Creek Stream. We're looking to improve the overall ammonia nitrogen discharge, nitrogen limits, fecal coliform, TDMLs, trying to control some of that with ultraviolet light. So it's really an upgrade to our system to improve the overall operation of the plant. We're trying to look forward into upgrading the plant so that as Chesapeake Bay with the nitrogen, total nutrient removal, that when that starts to come our way, we can meet those a lot easier because this design will allow us to make changes within it to meet those requirements. So we're trying to look ahead. This is probably a 12 to 15 year project to get all the 3 phases done. But we're looking ahead that if these nutrient requirements come in, that we'll be able to meet those as well. Much of the requirements are, like I said, through DEP with increased requirements on our discharge. So that's the main objective, is to improve the water that we're discharging. There's no change in the capacity of the plant. It's 6 million gallons per day now. It'll remain 6 million, but this will give us the opportunity with the alternatives we're putting in that we could change it to 7.5 million if the need if we required in some time in the future. We did a study before we started this on the growth for the whole service area, which is Pine Township, Bradford Woods, part of Hampton. So we have Franklin Park. So we did a study on that and projected out 25 years, and we'll still have capacity at the 6 million, looking at the growth that's possible from the land. If something changes, like I said, we'd be able to increase that capacity to the 7.5 million with minimal changes to the plant. So it's really nothing in the collection system or adding any more flow, then it's already permitted for, it's just improving the operation.
Any change to the size of the building?
No, we will have, you see the yellow part of the buildings will change, will stay the same. There's like a darker, more of a mild blue, closer to the buildings. Those tanks already exist. There's 12 tanks. The ones more towards the north there's 12 tanks. We would build, those are, we'd be building 6 of those now and 6 later at the phase 3. There's like a green tanks there, those are existing now, that's our clarifiers, which will be upgraded. And the last ones down below that, the 3 tanks would be in phase 3 as well. So its tankage will increase at some point, but no buildings itself.
Dennis, there's an area, I'm not sure precisely where it is there, where the effluent, I'm not sure what it would be technically called.
Yes,
the
that's it.
dirt, the effluent is spread out and it's processed basically by nature, I think. But you could talk a little bit about that and point out where it is. And does that affect this at all?
The discharge of the,
Yeah.
what discharges it, these are the chlorine contacts, not tanks now, these 2 blue ones. There's actually 4, but the one will be converted. But it discharges now to the stream. We're almost a straight shot down. But it's just an open discharge. It's going right into the stream. There's no sort of filtration or anything on once it goes through there. It happens all within the plants. The water, maybe just go through it quickly. The water now comes into this headworks building. At the final phase, we'll have another building here that'll have grit removal and screening, and then it's going to come and go through all these tanks here. These 9 or 6 basins here, 3 each, and these would be digesters. Once it flows out of here, it's going to go to the clarifiers, which will ultimately have 7, and then that goes to the stream, and then down to the UV and into the stream. But these tanks, this is sort of where the stuff's filtered out, where you get the clear water to supernate off of the process.
You'll still from time to time have to carry the dirt, for lack of a better term, the effluent that's been dried and processed.
Oh, yes, we have, this building here is our solids handling building. We upgraded, we had belt filter presses in there that would give us a dryness of around 13%. We've upgraded to a centrifuge, and we're getting 22, 24% dryness off of that. So we're actually reduced our landfill costs and the amount of sludge. We're still taking the same amount of pounds per year. We take about 600 dry tons a year to the landfill, but now we have a lot less water. We have about 30–40% less water, so less water means less loads. So we're making it drier. So that's the material that goes to the landfill.
Since this facility is physically located in Hampton Township, have you reached out to their officials and they've given you their blessing as well?
We have reached out to them. Every municipality that we serve, we have to do the same thing to get their approval that it falls within your comprehensive plan.
Thank you.
And in this case, it's our Act 537 plan. Does everybody understand what our 537 plan is? If not, Denny would be glad to explain.
I mean, somewhat, yeah. I mean, that's a plan that you're taking and you're looking at your whole service area for sewage, both collection and treatment. And, how are you gonna get, okay, you wanna build a plant here, so what do you need, so many gallons you're gonna treat, and then how are you gonna get it here? Is it all gonna be gravity, is it all gonna be pump stations? So it's building that collection system to the plant and then treating it.
And that plan was approved, believe it or not, in 1969. We have had a lot of amendments since then. It used to be that every subdivision we did had to have an Act 537 amendment to it, which was a long, lengthy, just exactly what we're doing now. We had to do this for DEP for every plan. They changed that probably 15, maybe even 20 years ago to minor, smaller subdivisions where there were no impacts on the sewage treatment plant itself that we could just send called a postcard, and that's how it's been handled. This, because it's major, requires a resolution from council. That's what you will be considering, and that's the
And
purpose.
it's really stating that you know we're gonna do this, that you've bought into our idea of how to repair our sewage plant.
So it will be an amendment to another amendment to our 1969 plan.
Then you may want to add that when we get done. When we get done, there will be no more chlorine at the plant.
Yeah, the UV.
It will go to ultraviolet light. And so that would make it a lot, no more hazmat issues or whatever.
Did you figure out which one of these you're gonna do?
The phased approach,
Yeah, like, cause I know it was like increase of $2.92.
what I think that falls into the,
With bonds,
yeah,
without
if
bonds.
we go to Penvest or if we go to
Did you
just
decide which
additional,
one of
no, we
these?
have not, yeah. I think that they were going to, when we're ready to go, to get the money, that we would look to see what's available from Penvest. I think with Penvest, it's a little more upfront, but the thing is, it would only be a 20-year loan,
Yes,
rather
long
than
one.
bonds would be 30 for that amount of money.
So we're just approving what you're doing, not how you're
Not the
doing it.
Right.
Okay.
Just the concept of the work, that we're trying to accomplish.
Is that it, Dennis?
Yep.
Bill, did you want to add anything?
No, the only thing I'll say is we looked at this because of the impact on the ratepayers. We've attempted to stage this over 3 cycles, probably as Denny says, 12, 15, maybe 18 years. And all this is to meet the requirements of the nutrient removals that are coming down and to improve the quality of the effluent going into the streams. And that's primarily what it is. It'll be our 3rd expansion. It'll be the last one we can do because we ran out of land at this point.
But it does give us the capability of increasing the discharge amount to the 7.5
So
million.
we figure we're out to 2050 at this point with the plan.
And the flow is into Pine Creek.
Yes, it goes into Pine Creek.
I seem to recall that water was in better quality going in than exists in there. It was really
Most of the time.
tremendous improvement.
You're right.
Okay, if there's nothing else, thank you for coming. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Okay, then we move to item number 5, discuss appointments to the Implementable Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee, which is going to involve some discussion. And, the Implementable Comprehensive Plan has been discussed multiple times, and I've given some thought to this. I think the simplest thing to do is to get the discussion going by indicating some thoughts that I have, and if other people can react to that, and I think some of the thoughts are not particularly, are not going to be controversial at all. Maybe others will be. But let me just identify what I thought was a way to proceed. We've received a couple of different versions of a memorandum that identifies what the Dennis Pluko and the what the implementable plan concept is, and the gentleman who's going to be passed it. Pashak, Mr. Pashak will basically be orchestrating it. He's proposed a composition of the committee that would be designed to elicit the views from throughout the town and ideas for what people want, what their wishes are, and to really get the thought processes going as to the what these individuals collectively and individually might wish to see in terms of the town's future development. This is really designed to be an active, implementable plan with an emphasis on the word implementable. So to actually implement it and use it. He had suggested, there had been a suggestion of certain representatives from different groups within the town. Let me just review and there's nothing, this is not written in stone, nor is this in any way, dictating what's gonna take place. It's just I thought, gee, here's a means of getting the discussion going. And, okay? It was contemplated that 2 members of council would be on this steering committee. And based on our prior discussions, we had talked about having 2 people, myself and Councilwoman Zachary. And that would be 2 of the perhaps 12 to 15 people that are going to be on here. And we're trying to keep our eye on a couple of issues as we think about who might serve on this steering committee. For example, it's we wouldn't, for obvious reasons, want to have all the people be from one certain ward. So while you're doing it, the composition thus far that I've mentioned would be 1 person from Ward 1 and 1 from Ward 7. Of course, that would be myself and Ms. Zachary. And then the next group was the Planning Commission. And with respect to those, there has been some discussion about the Planning Commission. Again, that's not locked in stone, but we thought that at least I thought, upon further reflection, there was some talk about having only 2 people from the Planning Commission. It wasn't locked in, but I thought that Ted Meinert from Ward 6, and I don't want to unduly emphasize the wards, Brian Morith and Richard Schnapp. The consultant recommended the Planning Commission be represented in that fashion, and the Planning Commission itself requested that at least that many people be part of the steering committee. And then the charter itself, if I have this straight, looking at the charter, it looked as though the charter puts a recommendation, the Planning Commission reviews it and puts a recommendation to council with respect to proposals for the master plan. I had construed that to mean that the entire Planning Commission would make a recommendation through their hierarchy as to those items. Then there's the PA Municipal Planning Code, Act 247, requires the surveys and analyses. And then under 209.1, the planning agency, that's the commission, would require to prepare a comprehensive plan to present to council. So under those codes, the responsibility for coming up with a plan really is lodged in the Planning Commission itself. And that would give us five individuals right there, and representation from the other from the various wards, which I won't keep repeating. We can just look at it. Now, then there was a institutional a group. We thought that institutional people from institutions, the institutions should be selected, and I thought.
You skipped business. Did you want to do
Well, I didn't
business?
skip it. I'm going to catch
I was
it.
just going in the order it was on.
Yeah, well, you're right. I'm not reading right off of that.
Okay.
I'm looking at my own notes here, Kim, but you're right.
Okay.
I mean, it's simple enough, just go to business. Well, let me begin, so I don't get myself mixed up with my own notes. Institutional, I had Amy Steele from the Northland Library, Dennis Blakely, the MTSA Director of Operations, who we just heard from, and Mr. Robert Shearer, the NASD superintendent. So those three individuals bring different.
Can I interject something? Or
Sure. Well, I don't want to get in a big discussion, but if
No,
you
yeah.
targeted question, sure.
Was Nicole Hansen, the first girl we interviewed on October 16th, the first woman we interviewed? She's in Marshall Township as a planning director. Would she be considered an institutional person?
I mention her name later, as you'll see, and suggest her as a person to be on the steering committee. I don't know. You can say, well, is Dennis Blakely a business person, or is he as an example, or is he an institutional, a representative of an institution?
Well, I thought he was in,
Yeah, well,
representative of an
these can be
institution.
argued both ways. Why don't you, if I can say respectfully, Greg, and
Yeah.
just kind of get these names out, and then if people wish to disagree in any fashion, they're certainly free to. And the point you raised is I understand it, and it's a valid point, but I don't think we're necessarily locked in to characterizing anyone who happens to be ultimately selected as a fitting in any particular category. I mean, the point is to find a varied and diverse group of people to bring information to the steering committee, ultimately to the town. So, if I may I just proceed, and then we can have a full discussion on all these points. I thought that now here's another one. The Environmental Advisory Committee is mentioned in here, and I think that's certainly, I endorse that idea of having a person from the Environmental Committee. I thought that Jason Singer was, who's been very active in that committee, and he's also runs his own business. So he's got a business hat, he's got an EAC hat, and that's one way of looking at it. But then at that point, that gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then moving on to the business that you identified right at along the way here, Greg, was Ken Dorbecker, who's got a lot of experience in business, in the computer area particularly. And then we thought another person was Dewana Alfonsi from Ward 3.
Right, yeah.
And so I'm just trying to see how many I got there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's 11 people there. And then and from the at-large, the citizens at large, as you mentioned, Nicole Hansen, who's currently a zoning officer in Marshall, would be with good planning background would be a good fit, I thought, for the steering committee.
Yeah, I think she
And
would be.
you apparently agree with
Yeah.
that. And
I thought she was outstanding.
and Tracy Shepard was the second one. Renee Weibel, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Weibel,
I think she says Wobble.
Weibel, okay. And James C. Raddick from Ward 7. And I think there was only, Toby, am I right, there was only one person from Ward 7 who signed up or volunteered?
Right.
Okay. But anyway, that would be as configured there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That's 15.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That's 15 people right there. There's nothing, I don't think it's written anywhere in stone. We don't want to get a huge committee to be too expensive, but it can be, I'm certainly open to increasing that number if that were necessary, if someone feels strongly that that ought to be done. But those are the names that I thought, and anyone, we can, I think maybe the simplest thing to do is to proceed, if it's acceptable, just proceed with, each individual can express their view. For example, Greg, you've already said a couple things. Would you like to start off the process and react to the
But
list?
the only other one, for 3 to 4 citizens at large, I would want to get Mike Rapich in there, because he has some good ideas, and
Did you say Mike Raddick?
Rapich.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
He interviewed on the 16th.
Right. Let me get my list out here so I keep track of who's on.
Ward is, he's 5.
He's 5. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Do you have any other comments you wish to make? At this point, you're not precluded from mentioning later, but just trying to get the process
No,
started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's those, you picked pretty much how people I would have picked, except for maybe one or two other ones. I had Jason Singer as a business owner and Duana Alfonso.
Those are the two that I picked also for the business. It said one or two, and that was two right there.
Mm-hmm.
But I had Duana Alfonso and Ken Dobler as, say, he was a citizen at large, but he could have been a business person too.
Same names, just
Yeah,
different
yeah,
categories.
different categories.
Toby, are you keeping track of the names?
Yeah, I
think that would be helpful.
I am.
Okay, so you know what Greg has said?
I do.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to say at this point?
No, that's all I
Okay.
want to say at this
And,
point. I reserve 2 minutes for
of course,
follow-up.
of course, you
Closing argument.
you can have your closing argument, your opening
Okay.
argument all together.
Okay.
Okay, Ralph, did you want to say anything at this point, or?
Well, I know that other than my top three were Ted Minard, Dennis Blakely, and Mr. Singer.
Okay, well, those
From
three were,
Planning
Leave the
Commission,
name.
Yeah.
institutional, and
no,
Well, weren't they in the planning commission?
Yeah, Ted's in the planning commission.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I don't think it's, in my view, now, you may, again, I respectfully defer to any individual's opinion, but I don't think it's critical that they be characterized, initially at least, as a business or whatever they are. I mean, somebody,
People need to be labeled.
yeah, well, yeah, at some point,
They
well,
don't need to be
yeah,
labeled.
they don't need to be labeled. that's right.
Well, I mean, you have Brian Morth in there, so.
Yes,
Yeah.
I had Brian Morth as a, what did I have him as?
Planning commission.
Planning
Well, he was
commission,
in
well, he's
my
the planning
top-
commission, yeah,
top 10.
yeah.
I might be, I might not be exactly on top of my game. I just came from the dental office, and I think the gas hasn't worn off yet, so
Okay,
you'll have to bear with me, please.
okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. And then Kim, why don't you go ahead? You've already made a couple comments, but proceed with whatever you wish to say.
I agree with your planning people that you put down there, and Brian is also, Morth is also on the EAC, so that solved my concern of two planning and an EAC person, because he's on both committees.
Right.
So that worked out nicely, I
Great.
think. The business people, I think Dewana and Jason Singer, because it said one or two there, I think those two are definitely the ones that I like. The institution, I agreed with you completely. I think, the three that you had, Dennis and Amy and Robert, were the good ones, the best institutional. Citizens at Large, Nicole, I thought was outstanding. Deb Sagan, I actually think would be good in there too.
Okay.
And I like, and Lynn Atman too. She has a heart and a passion for this town that I think is noteworthy.
Now, one thought I had, just reacting, if I may, just react to that particular one. She was kind of queued up for the financial development and promotional committee. I mean, some of these people have multiple talents, and we thought she might be a better fit there. I thought she might be a better fit there, but I hear what you're saying, and that's,
When you say she, who do you
Yeah.
mean?
well, I was,
Lynn Atman.
Oh,
I was talking about Lynn
She-
Atman.
She's one of four
Lynn
people
Atman.
that have applied so far for that committee.
Yeah. And you need 7 people in that committee, and you only got 4
She
people
applied
that,
for that museum position.
what, 4 people have applied? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And,
So we kind of saved her for
did,
that many.
did
Yeah,
you
but
write,
all these people are on other committees too, so why would she just
Oh,
have
you're
to be
saying put her
one?
on both?
Yeah, because, because, Brian would be on
Right,
3 committees
right.
now, so why could only she be on?
You mean
Why we'd have to save her?
Brian
from
would be
another
what, planning commission, environmental?
Yeah,
and
this,
yeah.
right, so there's
Oh, I
no
don't think
reason
that-
Lynn would have to be on just one,
I agree with your basic point.
so she could be on both.
Yeah,
What
And,
ward
uh,
is, let me double check, Lynn's
So were
in,
were you putting her down at
I'll
large?
pick-
Yeah,
Oh, Lynn
and,
Atman.
Lynn's
Deb
in
and
five.
Lynn
Yeah.
and Nicole were my 3 for at large.
Deb, Lynn, and
Deb
Deb,
is in 1, Nicole is in 3, and Atman is in 5. So those are all in 3 different wards too for
okay, those,
citizens at large.
those 3 instead of the 4 that I had proposed.
Well, you like Nicole, so that
Well,
was
that's
the
right, yeah,
same
we
one.
have agreement there, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
But everything else, the business, the 3, institution I had was same as yours.
Well, do you wish to say anything else at this point, Kim?
That's all.
Okay.
I pretty much go along with those that you selected, I'm fine with those.
You are? Okay.
Yes, I am.
I have nothing else. Go ahead.
You're on 7 committees already? Is that correct?
I am on 7 committees.
Yes, is that not right?
What committees are you talking about?
I'm
Could you
not sure
identify
of
them
them all
for me?
right now. What committees are you on? I thought it was 7.
Well,
But
you're making the assertion.
I don't
Tell me.
have it on here. You're certainly on a lot. What, MIDA? and,
MIDA.
The Ambulance Authority.
I'm a liaison for that. I'm not really on it. I'm just a person who comes back and reports to the.
Well, you are certainly on quite a few, and I have been left out of almost everything.
Well, we want to get you on
I
something.
would say, certainly I would jump off or switch those 2 names, my name with yours. I would agree with Kim, with Deb Sagan and Lynn. And the only other problem I have with any of them is almost every time I've had any kind of interaction with Ken he has been, if anyone doesn't agree with him, he completely disagrees with them. He goes off on. He's not the kind of person that I have been witness to working well with others in a large group like this. Is a big group.
It is a big group. Okay, let's cogitate on that, and then I understand your point. I've not experienced that with him, but I do understand what you're saying.
That would be my thoughts.
I don't have any personal experience with them at all.
Yeah.
So, I couldn't.
Well, he's a partner. He works with Joe Byerly. They both have a. They're
Farley's nice.
I don't know anything about Byerly
well,
other than he
they're, I
ran
mean,
for.
they're just people that work in the computer area. I guess he's up to say he's a computer systems expert,
Consultants, yeah.
consultant. Yeah. I don't know that he has any consulting role with us, but he's okay. Jerry, did you want to add anything from your perspective?
Well, your slate seems to be universal. Some of them, most of them are on mine. 'Cause I think 15 is about enough people to work.
Okay, well, we want to.
I don't think we need to put more than 15 on that committee. That's gonna be unwieldy.
What was my total here that I
15,
mentioned?
you had 15.
You got
15. Yeah.
And what it sounded like was just a little bit of mixing and matching.
I missed one of your names because
Yeah,
I only
like-
have 14 under your list.
I like that Nicole.
Kim Zachary, Minor, Morth,
Morth,
Schnapp,
Schnapp,
Steele, Blakely,
Shear,
Singer, Darbecker, Alfonsi,
Alfonsi,
Harrison,
Hanson,
Hanson, Shepherd,
Shepard, Weibel, and Radek.
Radok.
Weibel, that's one I
Yeah,
missed.
Weibel, to be A-I-B-E-L, Renee, R-E-N-E-E.
She did one of those at home.
Now, another thing that I was trying to keep my eye on at the same time, trying to get reasonable diversity in here, and having representatives of, the ladies of the town, and I think we've done that. I'm not counting them up, but the fact.
Jim Paschik made a point to say that there should be gender
Well,
balance. as
gender
much as
ba- I think
possible.
it's reasonable
When
gender
you-
balance
When you
here.
enunciated, there were 6 women who volunteered, and, I'm sorry, 8 volunteered, and 6 of them like you named.
I might say that I did not,
Pretty good.
when I was trying to construct this list, I didn't purposely pick people because they're guys or women, but it did come out, I think, in a reasonable way with balance by selecting the people independently because of their qualifications and not focusing on whether they were a man or a woman. So, does anyone want to make further comment? Now, you've made comment. I'm not on 7 committees. Do you remember what committees I'm even on? I know, I'm on the MIDA.
I'll have to look
You
them
were a
up.
member of the
I've
MIDA.
got the director.
Yeah, I think the only committee I may be on is the MIDA, as an actual member of it.
You're the vice chair of public safety.
Well, those
You're
aren't,
the
those aren't,
chair of zoning. You're the,
that's being a member of council.
That's-
I think-
I think,
Remember though, I'm not on any of them, except for Vice of
Vice of Public Works.
Public Works, right?
Public Works.
Okay,
You're on the MIDA.
I think that's it. I think
You're what, liaison for
Liaison.
EAC or?
For what? Well, that's right, but
You're
those are,
liaison for the,
those are not
Alternate
active,
to Kim, in case Kim can't.
they're not,
They're not on the.
but what I'm
committee.
saying is something, one way or another, you're either alternate or liaison or chair or vice on seven different
No.
groups.
I don't think, the liaison is not a member. For example, the ambulance authority. Go to a meeting, listen to what they say, I don't have a vote, I don't have any right, I don't even have a right to speak, I just sit there and report back to the council, as you've heard me, when there's usually not tremendous things to report, but anyway.
Right, no, I understand that,
your
but
point, but I think a real substantive, member of a committee, I think it's just MIDA is the only thing, and that is, meets only very infrequently.
Once a year, usually.
Yeah, well, that's by its very nature, there's not a lot.
Well, if Steve wants to be on this, why
Well,
don't we let him be it?
I'm not saying let him,
Then let him do it.
Well, does it have to be only 2 council members? Can we have 3?
you could, but I would welcome his participation. You want to add another council person? I would like to, I'm the chair of zoning, I think that fits in, I'm more than happy to,
I think 3 would be the limit, Bill, Reese.
Chair of zoning.
Yeah, you can't have 4.
Probably not a good
Right.
idea.
Well,
to
you
have
know,
four
I mean,
votes. It could be look like you're running the
is that
council
okay?
meeting.
Well, let's,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, can you do that?
that's up to everyone
Steve,
else.
Steve, would you like to be on the committee?
I would like to just
As a
certainly have a
council
little
person?
more, yeah, that
There you
would
go.
work for me.
I support that, all right?
And
Is that
from
okay?
time to time,
I think that's okay, sure.
people will
why
not be available too, so,
Who won't be available?
it's possible.
Well, there are times
There'll be
when somebody
a
won't.
number of meetings, so sometimes someone may not be available. I
That's
think
true.
Another reason why to have 15 people,
That's right.
and now maybe 6.
But it gets some diversity, a different perspective. That's fine with me. Okay?
In talking with Pashik about the number and not,
Mm-hmm.
he had no problem with going more than 15 as long as it's not
Well,
a
we don't want
great
to
number more
have,
than
we don't want to
15.
have 57,
No.
for example.
Right.
You're really close now, so.
Yeah.
Where will you leave Mike Rappich?
Well, yeah, I was just gonna ask if I could, other suggestions other than yours, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Mike Rappich,
Yeah, RAPACH.
Deb Sagan.
Is that a suggestion you're making, or just
No,
repeating?
I'm saying that has been made around the
Those
table.
were
Oh,
the
okay,
questions. Those were
okay.
the
Oh,
questions.
this is not yours?
No. Lynn Appleman.
Yeah,
I thought we could
I think
put,
you got a lot of good candidates, I'm not gonna, I don't think you have to say much.
we have a lot of good candidates. There's a lot of good candidates there.
Lynn
I agree.
Appleman. Those are the only 3 names, unless I missed somebody, those are the only 3 additional names to
Steve
consider.
Mertz.
Well, he already said, the chairman already
You're
spoke.
already
I
on.
thought-
Right, but that
I
was-
heard it's close to an edict.
Right,
You're
okay.
on by acclamation, Steve.
That's good, you're on.
I don't, you have people
Whether
here
you want
that
to or
might vote
not.
for you, they're here, you actually
You
can
got
look them in the
right,
eye.
Steve. Don't spoil your chance.
Oh, I thought he was saying the only 4 that weren't on the list.
No, I'm talking about civilians, you're a councilman. So, but the other suggestions were, that might replace someone, were Rapich, Sagan, and Appleman. I don't think I missed anybody.
No,
Well,
either.
There was a comment that you preferred that Mr. Dorbecker not serve because he does not necessarily function as well as you think one would hope in a large setting, large committee setting.
Right.
Okay.
Let's try to see the ones with the, and I don't want to dismiss that comment. In fact, I would like to get right back to it, but let's see how many we have here that we think that there's not,
If you added the 3 people, Bill,
that's what I'm trying to figure.
that would be 19.
19, so I got
Well, what, those 3 people?
If you added Rapach, Sagan, and Appleman, that would be a total of 19.
Yeah, I don't know where
I
it's,
think we should put Lynn on that other committee. She'd be good
Or
on
both.
Why can't she be on both?
yeah.
On one of the committee.
that. On the
Financial
advisory
committee.
Well, we have, do we have, is it fair to say, let
She'd
me
be
go,
good on that.
let me go through the names that I have, and I'm not, but do we have sort of initial agreement on Kim Zachary, Kim, and Steve Mertz for the 3 council persons? And then we have, I think, initial agreement, I'm just putting like a tentative agreement,
Sounds like you do.
with Minor, Morith, and Schnapp,
Schnupp.
which is, then Steele, Blakely, and Shear, I think we had
And Singer was
Singer.
agreement with them. And then,
You did not have, you had agreement on Singer.
as character, does it make any difference whether he's characterized as a
No,
businessman?
right
or-
now, I think you're at the point, you have the
Okay.
diversity that you want.
Okay, Singer, and then,
Dorbecker, you have some
Wait,
disagreement.
wait. So institution, there's supposed to be 2 or 3.
Yes.
And
Steel.
so we
Singer,
have
Blakely.
Steele, Dennis,
Yeah.
and Robert. Now we're to business, right?
I'm sorry.
EAC.
No, now we're only supposed to have 2 or 3 in that category, so that's 3.
I'm sorry.
Amy Steele,
Please-
Dennis
please repeat.
Blakely, and Robert Schuler.
I lost where you were going, Ken, please.
We're on institutional, we,
We're on
2 or
institution.
3,
I'm-
you have
I'm
4.
seeing if I'm right.
Oh.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I'm just checking the names that I thought we had.
The guidelines that I tried to
Yeah.
capture in that memo is what you're going from, Kim?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that the way that was written up was 3 citizens at large. I think you're gonna have more than that, the way it's turning out.
But we're on institution right now.
Yeah, well, that was Steele, Blakely, and Shear.
Right.
You're okay with those
Those
3?
seem to be locked in.
Okay, she's okay with those?
So those are good.
And you were okay without going back too much here and repeating, Minor, Morath, and Schnapp,
Yep.
and McKim, Zachary, and Steve
Mertz.
Mertz.
Okay.
Okay, and that's 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, with, and then business or EAC, I guess, would be Jason Singer.
Okay.
Business,
And we-
what?
Well,
Business or EAC, because
I-
EAC was
I
mentioned.
envision
Leave him
Jason-
on there as the EAC rep.
Yeah,
Well,
you can put another-
I don't think-
Or Brian could be the EAC rep up, and he's in planning. I was gonna put Jason under business with Alfonsi.
What, does it matter
I
though what
think
they're
Jason-
labeled
I
as?
think
Just put them
Jason
on
It
the
just
committee?
keeps it
on the EAC.
organized, so you. so
Yeah, I
you've
don't
got
think
the
it does
people
make a
you need.
difference, but
Another
But
But that's what we said.
slot him in the, but you say you'd prefer to see Jason slotted as the business person and Brian Morath, of course, he's on the committee, to have him.
Right, so
So
he
what do you-
kind of double duties.
What do you
so
put
that's
Yeah.
in
good.
the planning then?
That's what he, because he would
He's
be
in
doing
planning.
double duty.
I
No,
think-
that's what we said.
I think I'd leave him
3
in
people
planning
said.
because he is
Yeah.
actually on the committee.
Oh, all right, but,
Yeah,
oh, I
and
thought
he's
you were putting.
EAC too, so it's both, so
Now,
that's
the
good.
question is, what do we do with Ken Dorbecker? Should we just,
Wait, back to business. Jason and Alfonsi for sure then?
I would
I
say.
think
Yes.
everybody-
Yes,
it seems
okay,
like
just-
there's
I'm just making
consensus there.
sure we got all the nods.
Mhm.
I'd leave Jason on
No.
environmental, and Brian with planning. He's gonna be both anyway, so.
well, I don't know that slotting a person as an EAC person or a business person is critical, unless I'm really missing something. Do you see?
No, I don't see
See,
it.
I
At thi-
agree with
At this
that.
point, it doesn't seem critical.
There'll be a
But-
person that
but
will be participating.
Kim Zachary saying for organizational purposes, try to
Well,
keep the categories going
we're
for a
trying to-
while yet.
Trying to make sure we fill the roles that we
Right.
wanted to fill.
Yeah.
Right,
You-
right,
And
right.
you do with either Singer or
Okay,
Dorbecker.
well, then that gets you up to the, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
You're
6,
12 now.
7, 8, 9, 10, wait, 7, 8, 9. 3, 6, 9, 10 is what I have with Mr. Singer.
So we
And then
keep-
Two
11
business.
with Dewana.
Dewana would be 11, right?
That's right.
Yeah, that's
What are we
11.
doing with Dorbecker?
Well, that's the question. What do we do with Dorbecker?
My
I mean, if-
suggestion would be also, if I may, that adding Mr. Mertz, it does not necessarily skew the number of 15 plus or minus.
Well-
I just, again, in sake of,
That's fine. He's there.
let's not
What do
count
we-
that as against the total.
I'm not focusing on the total
Okay.
as a number, Toby. I'm just trying to figure out
Yes, sir.
individuals here.
Okay.
It seems like we just need to figure out our 3 at-large people is really all we
Well,
have
but
to do.
what about
'cause
Mr.
we-
Dorbecker? He's,
Are we leaving him on?
I mean,
Well, we already have our 2 business people already.
Those two
It
business-
only said 1 or 2, and we've got 2.
which are the business people? Singer?
Yep, and Alfonsi.
And Alfonsi.
Right.
Well, I thought we lifted Jason up on environmental.
There was no environmental. We had said we were gonna do 2 planning and 1 environmental, and then you said, no, we have to do 3 planning. So,
Who's the environmental person?
Jason is what
well, or
Jason.
Morris. Morris could be the environmental person.
Yeah,
But he's
these
on-
are people that, wait, hold on a second, if I may. Again, I don't think we have to get too hung up, in my judgment at least, as to whether Mr. Morath is characterized as a business person or environmental person, and the same thing with Jason Singer. As long as they're on the committee, they're bringing their brains and knowledge to the committee.
That's right.
Whether they, at this stage, they were labeled as an environmental or business person. I think it's almost, I dare say, it's probably just immaterial.
Well, it is until you tried to bring in Dorbecker as a business person when we already have that full.
But I don't understand what you're saying. If you take Morris away from planning,
Nobody took him away from planning. He's in planning.
so are you listing him in two places then?
No, just
No,
one place.
it's just, but whether, it's a question of whether we feel that Ken,
Understanding.
well, it's a question of whether Ken Dorbecker is acceptable to the majority of people in this group, or the council, I guess. But then if,
Could we put him down with the group for at large and then decide 3 out of that group?
Why not leave them down as business?
Because we already have 2 business people.
We don't have to put Jason there.
wouldn't Jason be more, I mean, if you wanted to split hairs, wouldn't Jason Singer be more clearly, I mean, I know runs a business of his own, but wouldn't he, I mean, isn't he the, what's his position on the environmental committee?
Chairman.
He's chairman of the committee, he's got certainly a significant interest in it. I don't quite understand why.
So is he gonna take the place of Brian Morth then?
No. Ryan's gonna be on.
Brian's on the planning commission,
Okay.
just like it is, and
So we vote Brian and Singer and keep going.
You're 3 guys on the planning commission, right?
yeah, that's right.
Morris,
Well, and under the code,
You-
the whole group of the planning commission, but they may not be members of the steering committee, but they have responsibility as a group to submit the master plan, right?
That is correct, no, and they have to hold public meetings regarding the
Right,
comprehensive
so
plan,
they-
so the
they
more
have a-
involved they are, the
That's
better.
right, so they have a role in this, we don't have to formally designate them onto the steering committee, but they lurk there in the background because of how the code structures their responsibilities.
Everybody was in agreement with Hanson, if I may, Bill.
Yeah.
And what that leaves is that the 3 people, Radok's credentials are as an architect, someone who's been involved in school buildings and community centers as a
Well,
designer.
that's what drew me to him.
Valuable person to have on this, and of course, he could be in business if you want to go in that direction. Perhaps the swing people are Tracy Shepherd, Renee Weibel, and then the suggestion Mr. Walkowskis has made of Mike Rapich, Deb Sagan, and Lynn Appin. Those folks are the swing people for the last several seats. I use the word several on purpose because if you added Rapich, Sagan, and Appin, you got 18 people.
So
Well,
is that too many?
That's
I think-
without Dorbecker.
So why,
Yeah, I think that's,
Well, unless you, if there's, I think you.
Because I'm counting 19, that's what I'm asking.
You make 19, and I'm saying,
Is that-
you're another councilman, don't count yourself against the total. I'm just,
If you
just a
don't-
suggestion.
if, I hate to put it in these terms, but if we eliminated Ken Dorbecker,
Then you have 17,
17 with who?
plus Steve as a.
Well, wait a second,
councilman, third
1, 2,
councilman.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
The number-
11, and where did you get the other?
The number, well,
The recommended citizens at large.
Which would be how many?
3 additional, Rapach, Sagan, and
7.
Appman,
Appin,
which takes you to 18.
Who's the other one?
Appin,
Appman,
And who else?
Sagan.
Rapach, Mike Rapach.
I think
Okay.
18 is way too big.
Yeah, I
It's way too big.
at some point, I agree with that. I think we ought
We're
to.
never gonna get anything done. 18
Yeah.
people to agree to anything,
Well,
that's gonna be
The
tough.
same
We
for
can't agree with
12 or
7.
13.
We're the consultant here at this point, but we don't, so. we
Well,
don't
I
ask.
think the thing about the whole thing is, Jim, they don't have to agree. All they have to do is come to an agreement that they're not going to vehemently disagree.
Okay, well,
The idea is that the steering committee is just that, they're a steering committee. Jim Paschik makes those final decisions
okay, but
to
Hanson, I
present the
understand.
plan.
Hanson, everybody's okay with Hanson?
Everybody was okay with Hanson.
Okay, and you, someone, I don't know whether it was you or Steve Mertz or Kim, suggested Deb Sagan,
Me and Kim.
okay? And then how many people would that be?
That's 16.
3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12 is,
She's not argumentative, isn't she?
Who?
Yeah.
Compared to Ken? Holy jeez, no.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Holy cow, that's not even a
I think she's
comparison.
Okay, well,
Ken is not argumentative.
Ken is the most argumentative person we've interviewed yet since I've been on
Okay.
town
well,
council.
we would have 1, 2, 3 from the council people, 3 planning, which is 6. Let's try to stay with me. 3 institutional, which is 9. Jason Singer, characterized as a business person for these purposes, is 10, right? Did I just add 10? And then Duana Alfonsi would be 11. He wanted to get 12, 13, is that,
That are institutional people,
well, we already have them.
that's 14.
No, they're already counted in my total. 3 council, 3 planning, which is 6. 3 institutional, which is 9. Jason Singer is 10.
Alfonsi is 11.
Joanna Alfonsi is, what number was that?
11.
11.
That's 11. Yeah, 11, okay, then we're looking at large. To stay with 12 or 13, we want, what, 2 more people?
15 is a good number.
Okay, then that'd be how many more?
4.
4. Does 15 make sense to you
Yes.
guys here? Does that,
Yes. and
anybody?
That was the
makes
original
perfect sense
goal.
to Paschik.
You got Nicole Hansen,
Nicole
Okay.
Hansen, everybody agreed.
Nicole
on.
Hansen, okay?
Yep.
Raddick,
Tracy Shepherd.
Well, but who are you?
You suggested Tracy Shepherd.
I know who I,
I would,
Renee Weibel.
Renee Ribel I thought she was good. I thought Raddick was also good.
right.
Deb Sagan was
That's what I
good.
well,
Um,
who would
Mike
Deb
Ravitch
Sagan,
was good.
who would Deb Sagan replace here, so we don't go over the number and get the numbers askew?
Well, the only one we have is Nicole so far.
Nicole? Oh, I thought you were saying
said that Raddick.
Renee Raddick.
Oh, these
we
were
all
people
agree.
that I liked. I'm
Yeah.
just throwing them out to other people.
But it's, again, I keep forgetting the total, so I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
You're at 12.
11.
You have 12.
11, 12
confirmed.
with, 12 with what?
12
Including
people.
Hansen, you have 12 now.
12, Hanson brings it to 12, right?
Mhm.
All right,
Who's the
So
architect?
13,
You
14,
have half a
15.
dozen people to choose from.
If we have 3 more people,
Jim Raddick.
3 more people, and you have 6 names right now.
we have to have, well, we should have Raddick because he's the architect.
That's a good idea.
He's
Okay.
an architect.
Okay, so Hanson and Raddick for
He's
sure.
13.
So
Okay, and then 2 more
Hanson, Star,
to get it to
Raddick,
15.
Star.
Well, Ravitch,
And-
Mike Ravitch.
We get consensus on Ravitch?
No, I keep hearing the name.
Because he keeps saying it.
And I'm not a ventriloquist.
I would be,
Is somebody playing a record in your ear?
I would be fine with Deb and Mike.
well,
Mike.
Mike Ravitch.
Mike Rappick and Deb
Oh, yeah.
Sagan as the 4. Nicole Harrison, James Raddick,
Nicole Hansen.
Hanson.
Nicole
At some point, we're
Hanson.
gonna have to say her
Hansen?
name.
it's 1, who's the
Hanson,
second one?
Hansen,
Raddick.
Raddick is 13.
What's his first name? Oh, James.
James,
James Raddick.
right.
And
One
we were
of your
talking,
picks.
who's the third?
Mike Rappich and Deb Sagan.
Mike, what's he?
Mike Ravitch.
I thought it's Jim Raddick.
No, Mike's
no.
Jim.
That's a different one.
Jim Raddick.
Name sounds a lot like Raddick.
There's a man that's got a very similar name to Raddick.
Right, and Raddick and Rappich.
Rapich, R-A-P-A-C-H.
He is a,
Okay,
What that does is it gives,
That's
it
15.
seems like everybody has a pick at that
well,
point.
that'd be 15. I'm okay with that. I mean, certainly, Deb Sagan's going to a lot of our meetings, expressed, she's obviously an intelligent woman, has background in this, so I mean, I'm not, and there's other people I might choose, but I certainly could support Deb. Deb, Hanson, who's,
Hanson, Shepherd, Rappich, and Sagan.
So
Would be
now
our-
we
Hanson,
keep- did we
Right?
Hanson,
Or
Raddick,
Hanson,
Raddick.
Raddick, I'm sorry.
Hanson,
Hanson,
Raddick,
Raddick, Rappich, and
and
Sagan.
Sagan?
well, no.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What, is that right?
yeah.
Say them again, please.
Hanson,
Hanson,
Got it?
Raddick,
Got it?
Rappich,
Rapid.
Oh, Rapich is another one.
Yeah.
and Sagan.
How many is that? How many does that
4,
make?
that's 4.
that brings us up to our,
15.
what we initially wanted.
Okay.
Did we keep Ken Dorbecker or not?
Nope, it sounds like he was,
No?
I think if, we don't want someone in there, from my perspective, if someone really has negative feelings about an individual's characteristics and ability to work with other people, I mean, we got 15 people here, no one's indispensable, certainly.
Right.
So, read those names back that you think that we,
well, the 3 council members plus I took it off.
All right, well, let me read them. I got it here. I think I've
Well,
got them all.
I can think through.
McKim, Zachary, Mertz.
Right,
All right.
Minor, Morith, and Schnapp.
right.
That's 6. Schnapp.
Schnapp.
I missed
Oh.
it.
Your A, your U must look like an A on you.
Those are, well, whatever. Then the institutional.
Steele, Blakely,
3
Shear.
more, Steele, Blakely, and Shear. That's
Singer.
9.
Singer,
Jason Singer is
Right.
10.
10, Alfonsi.
Alfonsi is 11.
Mm-hmm.
Hanson,
then-
12.
Then it's 11. 4 more, which would be
Hanson.
Hanson,
Raddick,
Raddick, James Raddick,
Rapich,
Deb
and yes,
Sagan, and
Sagan.
Raddick. Is that-
Rapich, Mike Rapich.
I,
And what's Rapich's background?
I
business.
just count him out, he was business, I just count him out and put him out.
And citizen of
Architect.
law, he would be, he's located.
16-year resident, 20 years of business experience in technology, healthcare, and finances, extensive U.S. and global travel, seeing how communities work and meet challenges and opportunities.
So he can tell us what they're doing in Europe.
And those 2 women on there,
We're gonna be very European.
Yeah, how'd that work out for them?
Shepherd and Weibel.
Still there.
You know,
Shepherd and Weibel are not on there anymore.
If I could
Yeah,
suggest at
What's
least one of those
There's
two,
the
What's
one.
left of it?
they struck me as
Add
being
one
an
more?
every person
Well,
kind of
we have
person.
15.
Well, you
I
do
think
with
that's a-
Steve. I'm saying
Wait,
Steve is an
listen,
additional
listen,
council
listen.
member, so
Right.
I would suggest
We
e-
could add
either
the one.
Shepherd or Weibel sounds good because they are an every
Well, I
person.
had both of them on my top areas on my list,
Both.
so.
Who are you suggesting is?
Shepherd or, and Weibel,
Shepherd,
pick
one
one.
or the other, but I
Okay.
think one of those would be a very
And-
good.
I
Is it-
very good-
had,
Is anybody dropping out, or does that make it
It
16?
makes 16 because you have an additional council member,
Well, or
but that's,
wherever you add the number, does it make any difference?
16 versus 15 is not, it's not
All
significant,
right,
Bill.
and we want to, I would say, I'm trying to remember, Weibel. What's Weibel's background? I selected her. for myself.
AT&T works at home.
Oh, that's
very
our
much a
number, yeah.
family person. It just
Yeah.
sounded like it'd be great to have
Yeah,
Right.
okay, she's
that approach.
That is a little bit diversity. Stay at home, she's home,
She's home,
working
but
at
she
home,
works from home, yeah.
raising her children, and she's got, right,
Right.
okay.
so are we in
keeping
agreement with that?
Well, that makes it 16. You think 16's okay?
I do.
Absolutely.
Jim
Yes.
Patrick would be
One person.
thrilled.
She'll
Okay.
give you a different perspective, if that's
All
what
right.
you want.
And that's Renee Weibel, is that who that is?
Right.
Yes.
It said, and who's the other one? Nicole Hansen,
Mm-hmm.
and
Jim
Raddick, Rapich, and Sagan.
Jim Raddick, Rabbits and Sagan, that's 5, and 5 instead of 4
Right.
brings it to 16 instead of 15.
Right,
I don't think we're gonna, that's fine.
good, all
Okay.
done.
We're good.
Now,
Okay, now, you have, later on this evening, after you have interviews and candidates are still alert, they're still alert back
Okay,
there
with us?
for the planning commission, Mr. Chairman, but you can reconvene your business meeting a little
well,
later
just
on.
a second, Julie, is it appropriate at this point to
You
vote?
you could adjourn your zoning committee and then reconvene it if you'd
reconvene.
like, but you have candidates sitting back here, Bill, they've been back here for an hour, some of these guys have been here for the whole evening.
Why don't we let them do it and then we'll do it?
When can we do it?
Do your vote a little later, as
Okay,
we
well, now
have
we're
it on the
going.
written agenda.
All right, but now we're moving to the,
And I highlighted everybody's full name.
conduct the candidate
Number
interviews for the
6.
town planning commission? All right,
Who's your
That's
first?
right.
let's proceed to that one.
No, we got a whole picture over there. It's not even been touched.
I'm not leaving.
Goodbye.
Good, I'm not leaving, don't get rid of that.
Were you coming back for the, just proceed to that? Yeah, okay. All right, well, we have the interviews where there's
Planning
four
commission.
people, Keith McGill,
Keith McGill.
David Eisenreich, Robert Gardner, and Michael Downey.
Keith McGill's up.
Now, there's no vote on this, these are interviews.
This is
right,
just
tonight.
interviews, right?
Okay?
Keith McGill,
Come on up, Keith. You're gonna take Bruce's chair.
All right.
You'll have to find another one.
Now, who presides over this technically? Me. Okay. Hi, Mr. McGill.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here this evening.
Sorry you had to wait so long.
It's all right, it was very
We
interesting.
tried our best, yes.
No,
The fact that you didn't run away says a lot of
Right,
things.
Right.
that gives you
Okay,
points,
anyone
that
who's
gives you
still here
points.
gets extra points.
Okay, how would you like to proceed?
why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? We, of course, have your resume. We can read it as you talk, or maybe some have reviewed it already. Please go ahead.
Very good. My name's Keith McGill. I live at 269 Wagon Wheel Trail Wexford. I've been a longtime resident of North Hills. I've lived in McCandless for 21 years. Prior to that, I lived in Ross for 16 years. Have one grown daughter. My wife and I have been married for almost 40 years now. My background, my educational background, I have a Bachelor of Arts degree from Edinburgh State College, now Edinburgh University, and a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering Technology from Point Park College, now Point Park University. My work background, I have been in the energy industry for almost 40 years, just recently retired. I had 28 years with Duquesne Light Company and almost 10 years with Westinghouse Electric Company. My background primarily, it was in middle to upper management. I was responsible for, in both of those areas, for construction projects. I worked in residential, commercial, and industrial. Primarily with Duquesne Light Company, I was responsible for the engineering department as well as the construction department in the Keysport area. So I've done a lot of work with zoning, with permitting, with residential, commercial, and industrial construction. So that's a little bit about me.
Well, our procedure is to go around the table. We usually begin with this gentleman right here, Greg McCandless.
Yeah,
He can pose questions.
Yeah, he pretty much, I really couldn't find, the planning commission really does a lot of stuff with real estate projects and zoning, and I couldn't find in your resume where you did that, but you said you do it.
When I was with Duquesne Light Company, both in the engineering and the construction department, I had the entire engineering group. So we were responsible for going out for the development of all the new plans, any kind of variances. I had the responsibilities for the right-of-way department. So we did anything that had to do with the electrical infrastructure. We were responsible for all aspects of that. So I was in charge of that group.
Mr. McGill, helping you out, your resume, under program manager, the back page of this one right here says that you were, you had dealt with project controls to meet project requirements.
Correct.
And where I lost my place here. But it looks like those responsibilities certainly involved supervising construction, at least indirectly, by supplying parts and valves and so forth.
Well, for schedule and cost.
Yeah.
I mean, I was responsible for maintaining, on my last job, we had a 150,000 step construction schedule that we used for major construction, and we had a $1.9 billion budget for the, that was the cost.
It says where I was looking for you, it says you supported the construction of 4 nuclear power plants.
Correct.
So that's certainly being involved with construction, but I mean, it sounds to me like you do have some background in construction.
Well, the construction aspect on plants that big, but also on when I was with Duquesne Light
I got you.
for URD plans and for commercial construction.
So you had to go for variances, you said, and you had to go before zoning hearing boards?
Yeah, I mean, I worked on the movement of the underground system in downtown Pittsburgh, which involved a lot with the city, whenever they put in the tunnel, and we had to move.
The tunnel?
Yeah, when we had to move.
Under the river?
Yes, we had to move in the downtown network. There's all kinds of electrical infrastructure down there. I was on that team that was responsible.
Where they go over to that power plant on the north side?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we had to move all the cable, the pipe type cable, and so that was all dealing with the city. I also dealt with the city inspectors and in any of the hookups and construction in the downtown area as well.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Greg?
No.
Thank you very much. Ralph?
With respect to the industrial, residential, and commercial growth of the town, where do you see the town going over the next 10 years?
You want water?
I think that that's something that requires a balance. I think McCandless is a great place to live, but I think it's also a great place to work. And I think that in order to balance that out, I think that's the responsibility of the planning commission to make sure that that balance exists. And where applicable, where it's properly zoned for commercial industrial, that type of business is developed with the respect to the citizens here in the community.
No, I'm still a couple of minutes.
Thank you, nothing else.
I have no questions, thank you.
Joanne?
I have no questions, thank you.
I looked at your resume pretty carefully. I have no further questions. Thanks for coming in.
Good too.
Well, I looked over your resume, it looks pretty good to me.
Thank
You're
you.
retired now.
I am,
Just recently, right?
just recently, March, yes.
Very good.
You've been married 40 years, did you say? Or almost 40 years?
Almost 40 years.
I'm kind of curious, I'm hitting 40 this year myself, and I wonder, what's your wedding, your anniversary date?
October 6th.
Oh, October, I'm ahead of you, in January.
So you're retired and looking for something else to do, are you?
Well, here's the thing. Part of my personal goals whenever I retired was I think it's everybody's responsibility to do something for their community, whether
Good
it's
for you.
a one-time thing or whether it's something that's more permanent. And that was one of my personal goals when I made the decision to go.
Good for you.
Jerry, did you say you had some questions, or?
No.
You did not, okay, very good. Well, thank you for coming in. We'll go to our next person, which is David Ehrenreich.
Thank you very much.
Ehrenreich.
Eisenreich.
Eisenreich.
That's correct, it's Eisenreich,
Eisenreich.
with a little on the end.
He has a very questionable high school background.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to not explain some of the people I hung out with in high school.
It's pretty tough.
I'm Dave Eisenreich. I have lived in McCandless since 2002. I actually live right up the hill on Parkmont Estates. I have been married 46 years and have 3 children, grown children, and 6 grandchildren. 2 with each of my 3 grown children. I'm also retired from 44 years at Pittsburgh National Bank and then later PNC Financial Services Group. When I started at PNC, I was working at Copper's Company as an engineer doing laminated wood construction design projects for a division of Copper's. They wanted me to move to North Carolina to the fabricating plant, and I'm a North Side kid of Pittsburgh. And if you saw that plant, there was no place there for me. It was much too rural for my upbringing, and I was only 21 years old at the time. So I chose to stay at the bank and was actually hired by Pittsburgh National into a construction design department who was put together to oversee the building of the first headquarters building of Pittsburgh National, which is the granite building that sits at the corner of 5th and Wood. Having worked on that project, I then, along with 3 of the other guys in my department, saw light at the end of our tunnel, so to speak, because when we were all hired, they said, as soon as that building is done, you guys, we have no use for you. We sat and collaborated and basically looked around the Pittsburgh National Bank footprint and said, you know, you guys are spending a tremendous amount of money on architectural and engineering companies and construction managers overseeing your projects, and we just got done doing a $39 million project for you. At the time, that's a bargain at today's prices, but that's what that 30-story office tower cost. So we actually created a new career path for ourselves that ultimately grew into several hundred people at my retirement in 2014, with PNC's footprint now over 23 states in the District of Columbia. And I had the good fortune of working on all the acquisitions that took place, from the second bank in the Pittsburgh region behind Lofty Mellon Bank at the time in the 70s, to being one of the largest super regional banks in the Mid-Atlantic states. That footprint extended to St. Louis, it went to Chicago, and all through the Southeast and everywhere but New York State, oddly enough, and West Virginia are the 2 states that PNC never had an interest of getting involved with that bank acquisition.
My acquisition activities initially, in the early days of my career, really was looking at their portfolio of buildings and determining what do we want to keep, what do we want to shed, and where did we want to shed and then build. And I got involved in a lot of consolidation projects, buying these banks, where it was decided, you know what, the operations center that they had is not large enough, so we would get involved in planning out a brand new operations center or a data center by the old definition of data centers. To the very last project I worked on was the towers at PNC, where I provided some collaborative oversight to the construction manager, who was also a PNC employee. Throughout all of my career, I have attended numerous planning and zoning committee meetings. Some of them very simple meetings where we have a branch bank involved. I had an experience in Cranberry Township back in the 80s that for a 4,000 square foot branch, I was in front of the planning commission 4 times. Because we were a tenant to the Gumberg Company, who was the developer of the property. And we finally got to a point where, you know what, whatever the developer isn't doing for you, it's out of my control. So my point of bringing that story up is that when you're in these meetings, you have to find a way to collaborate. You have to find a way to, get people over the hurdles that seem to be holding up your project. And I see myself as someone who can listen, who can put together a plan or a thought and communicate that plan or thought in a very constructive way that would be of mutual benefit to whoever is going to benefit from that development. And in this case, I think it's the town of McCandless that would benefit from some kind of collaborative effort in the very early stages of development. I also have been listening very intently about the comprehensive plan that you guys spoke of earlier, and I think that that's a great idea, something that's required, I believe. But in my world, we would call that a strategic plan. We were going to sit down and put together a strategic plan, and I helped develop strategic plans for retail banking growth. I also developed a strategic plan to contract retail banking growth. As the channels of delivery started to change and people aren't walking into branches, I got involved in projects to help expand data centers and call centers and all the other channels of delivery. Again, looking to find what is the right mix of real estate portfolio to a business that's evolving. And so that was really kind of where I spent a lot of my time on the strategic side.
You saw a lot of growth at PNC during your tenure.
Pittsburgh National Bank had 54 branches in the greater Pittsburgh area. And then it exploded to, when I retired, it was about 2,600 branches.
You give Jimmy Rohr a lot of credit for that.
I give, oddly enough, for 44 years at that bank, I worked under 4 CEOs or 4 chairmen of the bank. And Tom O'Brien was the one that had the vision for the growth. Once the opportunity to grow a banking franchise, first into statewide banking and then into regional banking, it was Tom O'Brien who really had the foresight into doing that. Jim Rohr came in and implemented that strategy even further, but in a much more difficult financial environment. He had a lot of hurdles to get over at the time he came in as chairman. But I admire both of those men. I admire the chairman that was there, Merle Gillen, when I was first hired.
Dave, let's get some questions from the audience or from the council. Greg, do you want to?
Well, I remember interviewing David for the zoning hearing board, and I thought I was really recall most of his. You said you did work for do work for before the zoning hearing board, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I pretty much have a good flavor for what you've done in the past. But I was curious, whereabouts did you live on the north side?
I lived off of Clayton Avenue, Perry and Clayton.
Okay.
Federal Street Extension.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's. I went to Annunciation Grade School and
right.
shared 4 years of high school with Bill at North Catholic.
Okay. Well, that's too bad.
Greg went to North too.
Yeah, well, Bill and I just celebrated our 50th high school reunion a year or so ago.
Okay.
So,
Okay, thanks, thanks.
Ralph?
There seems to be a plethora of banks growing up in the McCandless area. For whatever reason, I'm still rather confused, but for the future 10 years of the town, where do you see the greatest expansion that would be beneficial to the town, commercial or residential?
Being in my late 60s, I'm seeing and getting lots of mail every day from, people that are offering these, carriage homes and retirement homes for the people that are in my demographic. We're all baby boomers, or Bill and I certainly are. And, and I see a growing need for what I think will be a downsizing residential market into carriage homes and first floor master bedrooms, things that I currently don't live in now. But whenever I get these advertisements, they all seem to be outside of this area. A tremendous amount of that development is going on up in Cranberry Township and, in southern Butler County, Adams Township. So I think that that is clearly going to be a market on the residential side. The township developments, I think, are relatively new compared to where I grew up. We're not talking homes in hundreds of years, but maybe 20, 30, 40 years old, which would be, I think, great homes for younger people that we hope to keep in the township here. On the commercial and industrial side, I would not want to see McCandless become too heavily industrial. If there is space available and there's an option to do it in retail or commercial rather than industrial, I would be in favor of that. Only because in my career, there was so much emphasis at PNC on sustainability, on the sustainable development of and operations of buildings. And I would hope that the town would be looking, with an eye on sustainability as well.
Thank you, David. Kim?
I also remember you applying before. Thank you for your perseverance. Of these two boards that you're applying for, is there one you prefer than the other one, and why?
Well, last year there was only one opportunity for me, and that was the zoning. So I didn't really have an opportunity to look into the planning commission. And when that was offered, when I saw the advertisement for it, I really thought that I had better success with planning commissions in my career than I did with zoning hearing boards. Because it's usually the zoning hearing board who is, attempting to, implement your design into the current ordinances. Whereas in planning, we were always able to walk in with what would be a new business venture. And that was music to the ears of a lot of the townships and communities where we've come, especially if we were putting in a larger facility. That meant jobs. It was a more pleasant experience. Not to say it was an easier one, but at least it was more of a positive feeling, and that's what I think I would get being on the other side of that equation, would be to be more involved in the planning side.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. John?
As you look at McCandless, what area or what would you say is a problem for us in our town?
Like a lot of the townships in suburban areas, we don't have like a town footprint. Yesterday I drove through Mars, and there's a little old community, and Zillionople and Butler, and our township doesn't have that kind of centric area that people can say, I'm going downtown, or I'm going into the
There's
village.
no there.
We're spread out, and geography had a lot to do with that. When you saw the development of McKnight Road, how was that going to grow when it effectively is a big narrow channel, right? With a creek running through it, and how was that going to ever develop? And Ross attempted it earlier, and then as it grew, it came out into McCandless, and then the housing development started. So the closest thing to the town atmosphere, quite honestly, is McCandless Crossing. When you're in there, you feel like you're in a town. I feel like I could walk around there. Now, I've had some concern about how all that came down, in terms of, I think the developer probably asked for way too much, to try to fit too many storefronts into that space, and, it's created some traffic at times. But that is the closest thing, and if there were ways to develop those kinds of other communities through retail and, mixed-use facilities with the carriage homes, the townhomes, things that I see out in Pine Township right now.
Well, I understand what you're saying, and we've heard this before, but as you're saying Pine Township or Cranberry, where would you profess that we do this in McCandless? Because we don't have the ground to do that.
Well, we have a rather large site right down over the hill that was planned for, a lot of paving in a big box.
But
Aside from the hurdles that have been uncovered through that process, I think that there still could be a development plan in that.
Remember, we don't own that though.
Right, I know. But I think part of the planning commission in the town is to create an environment where developers want to come in and explore opportunities. I don't know that the job of the council or of the planning commission is all about sitting back waiting for somebody to come in the door with an idea. I think the idea is for us to, have a lot of interaction with the potential developers and have them know who we are and what, and I think your comprehensive plan is that strategic plan that I would call, is the way to get people to come in there and say, you know what, they've got a great growth plan and maybe I want to be a part of that.
Okay, thank you.
I have no questions, David. I've heard what you said. Thanks for coming in.
Sure.
None for me?
Well, I remember your interview before. And this one.
Just 1 year older.
Well, you covered the ground pretty well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I don't think,
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Our next is Bob Gardner. He was back there, I think he still is. Rob, come on up and take a seat.
good evening.
I guess just go right into it?
Yes.
Okay. Didn't know if I had to follow some segue. My name is Rob Gartner. I am a 22-year resident of the town of McCandless. I've been on the planning commission for the last 8 years. I have 3 children who've grown and lived very, very well in the district or in the town. My current position, I am the director of facilities for North Allegheny School District. So my work is evident as your children have gone to the district schools or have you visited. I'm responsible for overseeing the operation and maintenance. Recently, my position's been changed a little bit. I've been designated to just solely focus on project management, contracted services, major renovation projects, things like that. I've been working at the North Allegheny School District for 22 and a half years. I've enjoyed my time on the Planning Commission. I think I've provided valuable insight into operational and maintenance type activities that are associated with developments, looking at simple things like access to dumpsters and things like that that maybe aren't always thought of when you're looking at work that's being considered. So I think I've brought good insight into those kinds of things during my tenure on the Planning Commission. Did I miss anything?
No, we know you to begin with, and we have your resume, but unless there's something else you'd like to add, I'm gonna ask Greg to pose any questions that he has and go around it.
Yeah, I don't have any currently. I may jump in later, but I just don't have a current question for you.
I have no questions at the moment.
What are you most proud of that you have done on the planning commission?
I think I'm most proud of that we worked as a group to look at challenges that we get presented with different types of developments, and using the insight of the group as a whole, provide, I think, constructive feedback to developers and applicants on on potential developments they'd like to consider. I think that hopefully, I believe, provides value to what the town ends up getting as part of the development in the end. And again, as I said previously, just looking at where dumpsters are located and how they're screened or how trash trucks will get to them. And I mean, we even get into details of when you're plowing snow, where you're going to put the snow at. you know, things sometimes people don't think of when you're trying to build something, but in the real world you have to be aware of. And again, I try and bring hopefully that with the other members of the group, some of those kind of questions to the developers that come in before us, and make sure that they're thinking of those things, because anybody, and I've done this for a long time, and I don't know if anybody's an architect in the room, but architects draw lines and circles for trees and things like that very easily, but sometimes the reality of how they work in the real world isn't the way it looks when it's on a piece of paper. And I've found that in my own career many times with the way things have been drawn or designed, that when you start to look at them and how they're supposed to work in reality, they don't necessarily work that way. So, kind of a real world approach.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Having already been on the planning commission, what's probably one of the biggest problems that you run into?
There's no cookie cutter. I mean, they're all, each project, each development has its own unique challenges, and you have to kind of look at them individually. Whether it's a residential development where, recently we've looked at a development at a site that seemed like it was, to us, it was very challenging and tight. And developers said, well, this is what I need to do to make this project work. And we've, pushed back and said, well, that's nice, but, it doesn't look like it's gonna work very well. So we've challenged them to make sure that they go the extra mile to make sure what they do present, and we eventually, hopefully will approve, or not approve maybe, is the right thing for that piece of property.
It's good to hear. Thank you.
Rob, you're a Screaming Eagle. You were with the 101st. Is that what I see?
My youngest son is a lieutenant in the 101st.
He
yes,
is.
sir.
Well, good for you. Good for him.
That's good for him.
Yeah, good for him.
Thank you.
You can bask in his reflected glory.
But
I don't have any other questions. One thing I did notice that the planning commission, and I think you can confirm this, the individuals who participate in that are generally very well prepared. There's a lot of reading and.
I spend time looking at.
It's obvious that you do. Yeah.
I don't just walk in cold hard.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot of drawing review and things like that you want to be able to. So when the developer, again, whoever comes in, you can ask specific questions about things that are on those drawings. Because in effect, you're approving those drawings. So
Right.
if there's something that doesn't look right or you don't like, you need to make sure you challenge them or question them about it. And many times when you do, they do make some adjustments or changes based on, input and ideas that we present or provide to them.
Thank you very much. Steve?
And we need to say thank you for the time you give the town.
No problem, I enjoy it.
Steve?
You've been on a while.
Steve, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good.
Jerry, you're next.
Do you see any problems with redevelopment coming in?
I don't see it as a problem. I think it's a uniqueness that the town's
challenge.
beginning to see. And again, the gentleman before me, hit on probably the biggest one that's gonna come up at some point in time is the Lowe's or the Rave and the, whatever that was, Trader Horn, I'm sorry, I can't remember all the things over there.
Blazer
Bookstore.
Drive.
Okay,
Blazer
Blazer Drive,
Drive.
yes, that's kind of encompassing. I mean, that's, I think, the next big redevelopment that I see that potentially is gonna come down. I know there's some challenges there with the floodplain, access, I mean, there's a lot of aspects to that are gonna have to be part of that situation. But I don't see it as a problem, I just think it has to be done in the context of what's the best type of redevelopment. Just because it was a big box store before, doesn't mean it should be a big box store now, or it should be a theater. It needs to be put into context of what's best now, not what it was, 20 years ago when it was built.
Well, thank you very much for coming in and your comments, and
My pleasure. Thank you.
we will see you.
Yeah.
Where's your son stationed now?
He's at Fort Campbell.
Okay.
So, yeah, he's lieutenant in the field artillery. So he enjoys blowing stuff up.
Mr. Downey?
Good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Mike Downey. I am 35 years old. I've been a resident of McCandless since 2006. Purchased my first home on 327 Hall Drive. In 2013, my wife and I bought a parcel of land on Inwood Road, at the very top of the hill. and we built a home there. I have a 6.5-year-old daughter, a 1-year-old son. I've been in Pittsburgh since 2004. I'm originally from Cleveland. My father was a city manager for 30 years, so I understand some parts of city government. Some of it I've intentionally blocked out. I went to St. Vincent College and met my college sweetheart there. We married and been here ever since. I've been in commercial real estate since 2004. My background in commercial real estate is office tenant representation, finding office tenants space. So through the 13 years I've been doing real estate, I have had a full gamut of everything and anything you can ask for in and around the city of Pittsburgh and across the United States. So I'm very comfortable, understand, can read drawings very well. And I know that the planning commissions, you know, they're the questioning agency of government. They are to question developers and to make sure that they get the most thorough package they can. And the best package they can. What looks the best for the environment, the township, the community, etc.
Unless there's anything else you want to add, we'll move to questioning by Greg.
Good.
Greg
Yeah,
Wilkowski.
you say here in your qualifications, real estate transactions with a value north of 500 million.
Yes, sir.
Boy, that's really large.
That's a lot of transactions, yes.
Oh, okay. So
It's
that's
not one transaction.
holy
I wish it
jeez.
was. I wish it was an annual one.
In
No,
your
that's
dreams.
my career.
In your
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thanks for the clarification.
Hmm?
That was a little humbling.
For me.
No, for me. Yeah. How'd you like Safe Business?
Loved it. I met my college sweetheart there.
Yeah.
Hard to go wrong.
So do you have some feel for zoning laws and zoning here, code?
Yes. Yeah. Oftentimes we're, most of the time, we see it on the development side of our business. We're currently, my office is working with a group that's developing an office in Lawrenceville. And we are going from the ground up, so we are doing every minute detail. And so yes, I'm familiar, and but most of my experience is really with the signage. That's a big thing.
With the what?
Signage.
Putting signs, do you have to go before zoning hearing boards at all? For
Most of the time, it's just an application unless it's outside of the scope.
Yeah. Okay. So you don't have any experience with going before the zoning hearing board or anything?
No.
Okay. Okay, thanks a lot.
Rob?
Not a question, but an observation on congratulating you on having the wisdom to leave Cleveland. That was a very important move on your part. I have no further questions.
Kim?
I don't think I have any questions either, thank you.
Joanne?
I don't have any questions.
I've listened to what you've said, I've looked at your resume, and I thank you for coming in, and I think I understand your strengths and as described by you. But thanks for explaining it to us. Steve?
I'm good.
Jerry?
Thank you for coming in. It's nice. I left a mistake on the lake for.
Double trouble. It was the twice.
I have cousins that live there.
That's one of your relatives there.
Okay.
Okay, we don't have to deal with Meyer.
Thank you.
He was examined before.
Bob
No. Now, are we going to review the budget, or are we going to reconvene
Let's see here.
the regular business meeting for the candidate steering committee?
Why don't we dispatch with Bruce, what do you think?
All right.
You want to just,
Let's just
Keep moving. Let Bruce.
what's Bruce gonna talk about?
budget items 413 and 414.
Okay.
Just give us
We'll take care of those, then we'll go back and forth.
Wanna wait for Kim to come back?
Yeah, of course. And then she left, but yes, of course.
Wait, Kim's taking a pause here for a minute. Let's give her a minute to get back.
Mr. Chairman, while you're taking this brief pause, I am,
Yes.
when you do get to reconvening the meeting, which our chairman, Mr. Hoffman, would do, reconvening the business meeting.
Well, we're gonna take a vote before
Yeah,
that.
no, when you get to, no, during that meeting, when you reconvene the business meeting is when the vote will occur.
That's right. No, wait a second.
You have to reconvene the business meeting at
Right.
the end of your committee meeting, we'll reconvene the business meeting.
While we were waiting, Toby, I've had a few complaints.
I just want to tell Bill.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to understand what,
So, when you conclude the zoning committee meeting,
We convene the regular
then
business.
Jerry will reconvene the business.
that's where we take the vote.
That's where you take the vote. And I am prepared to read right through, I kept the master
Okay, that's
list,
fine.
Me too.
so I'll be able to do
Okay.
it right through for you.
That's fine,
Fill in
okay.
the way we say, when fill in the blank, the names.
The steering committee names.
I'll be able to
But
say-
that's where
it'll be
the
in alphabetical
vote
order.
on the steering committee will occur under reconvened regular business meeting.
Right.
Right,
Okay.
and where it says steering committee as follows, maybe you want to say as follows, or something like that
Okay.
in the motion.
So we have a complaint from a citizen about another citizen getting a right to know without filing a right to know. Do we know how that happened?
Do you want to discuss that in the zoning committee agenda, Mr. Chairman?
Do I want to discuss
The
that?
question Mr. Burt's is asking here.
Well, I was just figuring we were waiting until that had started again.
Why don't we defer talking, because I have no idea what that's about, but I think we ought to proceed with the agenda as it's set forth.
Okay,
Maybe you can commiserate with Steve after.
later on.
Ready?
I was gonna bring that back in a second. And we can put that back unless Steve needs some more. Jerry looks like he's got enough to finish the night.
All right, for the moment.
Bring your sleeping bag.
Okay,
Okay.
where'd he go?
You're down two now. I'm not, take a quick break myself.
So we're doing the budget next, is that where we are?
Yep, 4:13.
4:13.
Good job, John.
Recycling.
Is that on camera? We got John recycling?
Bothering you, Joanne?
No,
Kim, is that-
I'm turning
No,
this so Bill
we
can
can
look
overlap
at
a
it.
little
Yeah.
bit, I'm fine with that.
All right,
Save me the trouble of carrying that thing with me. Thank you.
4:13.
See if I got all this. Another 4-hour meeting.
You'll be lucky if you get out here before us.
Was promised to be fast.
Faster and fast.
When I first got on council,
They go through this thing, every page. Any questions on this page? Any question on that page? We'd be here till midnight. It was just unbelievable.
That's how I go through it.
We're not far from it right now.
No, I mean, you do it on your own meetings.
No, I said the worst we were here till 1 o'clock with that skyscraper,
Yeah, yeah.
when they brought the whole team of architects and engineers and,
They never built it.
no.
We're all here, go.
Okay, let us
13,
proceed.
let's go.
Let's proceed. We're,
413 is a code enforcement budget, and basically it also involves building inspection. The only item that stands out is the new code enforcement officer. He's part-time. We have divided him into two parts. He started off strictly in code enforcement. We've gradually got him into zoning enforcement. So part of his salary will be, 50% of his salary will also be in the planning and zoning budget in 414. We have $1,000 for potential engineering costs. Generally, that happens if we have a building that has to be condemned and we need a structural analysis in order to do something like that. And our legal costs, we have at $2,000. Typically, we don't have to use a lot of legal funds for code enforcement. We're able to handle that within our staff, generally speaking. No offense to you, sir.
You can spend it if you don't have to.
anything else on 413?
That's it. That's all I have to talk about.
Let's proceed to 414 then.
414, same idea. There is half of our code enforcement officer is in zoning. He has done some zoning, particularly with signs. He's been doing a great job with everything. The grass complaints, the sign complaints. We have a lot of sign complaints. People putting up signs illegally.
Yard signs.
Yeah. So that's a big deal, getting those down. He's done a great job with that. He has achieved a compliance without having to go to court. That is great that he's able to do that. He goes to great extents to call people. He's able to research, find out where people are, and he does a great job with that. That's really the only other thing that I had to point out with
Created a
that.
tracking system too.
Oh, his tracking system is amazing. He was off one day and I was getting, I don't know if he did this on purpose, he wrote 4 letters to people who had trash and high grass. And then he was off the next day and I was getting the phone calls, but I was able to go to his tracking system and he had pictures. And I was able to look at the pictures. I said, well, yeah, you've got trash sitting out at in your backyard. And he said, oh yeah, well we'll take care of it. We're getting it taken care of. So they were just to look at his pictures, read the letter. One lady said, or one gentleman said that I don't even live at that address. And so I was able to track it down, and it's like, yeah, but you do live at this address, and that's where
Who's doing all this work?
our code enforcement
guy we
officer.
hired back in spring.
Yeah, he's doing a great job. His tracking system is amazing. It's all tied to itself.
And what is his name, in case you refer to him? So we-
Jeff Shaneman.
Jeff.
Yes.
Where does he sit in the office?
He sits right across from John.
Sort of a crew cut, short hair?
Yes.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
bigger
so-
fellow.
Bigger, yeah, right.
He's a former karate expert. He's had to back off of that.
They'll make any quick moves around him. Okay, anything else on this one?
I don't have anything. If anybody else has any
If,
questions, that would be great.
It's time for public comment on the agenda items. Looking at the
I think you're doing fantastic.
Thanks very much. I assume no one has any comments. Correct, okay. In that case, we have no further business in the zoning committee. And we'll go back to to Jerry. Jerry, it's all yours.
Meeting will come to order. Move to appoint the membership of the Town of McCandless Implementable Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee.
Second.
Second.
Second, Bert.
Joanne seconded, I believe.
No.
Doesn't matter who seconded it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I made a list from the committee meeting earlier this evening.
Excuse me, 1 second. Who moved?
He made the motion.
Can he make the motion as the chair of the
Technically,
committee?
he can.
What's that?
Technically, he can. Ordinarily, our practice is that he asks for someone to make a motion.
Why don't we use our practice, and just go back and
It would
make
be
it,
between you and the second.
what's that?
It would be between the second and the...
Okay, I make the motion, Steve, you second it?
Sure.
Done.
Good.
Thank you.
Done.
We gotta vote, don't we?
All right, and
All
before you
those in
vote,
favor
before you
indicate-
vote, I
You
should
gotta
read
make-
the
Name the names.
Deanna
Well, don't we have to
Alfonso,
vote on,
you're voting for the committee members.
Right.
maybe I mixed
Move
up.
to appoint.
Move
He's
to,
gonna name
oh,
them.
And
what
the
was his
members-
motion? And I maybe,
She already did.
She made the motion. Powers made the motion, Mertz seconded it.
to appoint the membership as you're gonna read them.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Deanna Alfonsi, Dennis Blakely, Nicole Hansen, Edward Minor, Brian Moore, Mike Rapech, James Raddock, Deborah Sagan, Robert Shear, Richard Schnupp, Jason Singer, Amy Steele, Renee Weibel, and 3 members of council, William McKim, Kimberly Zachary, and Stephen Mertz.
Sounds good.
A total of how many?
And a total of 16
16
persons.
Okay, thank you.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Need a motion to-
We need a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor of adjournment indicate by saying aye.
That was a quick one.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. On we go.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to open the Finance and Personnel Committee. Call it to order. Move to number 2, notification of public hearing is scheduled for council's regular business meeting on an ordinance tentatively identified as ordinance number 1470, an ordinance reappropriating certain amounts of money within the general fund 2017 budget. Okay, do you want to review that a little bit, Reed, or did we discuss it enough today? Just simple.
This follows our protocol. It's in the charter, and we have an expansion of what's in the charter under our administrative code that any item in the budget that is $5,000 and 10% over the budget, that we need to have a reappropriation authorization by town council. Reed Jebner, our finance director, assistant manager, is in the process of finalizing that so we can get as close as he can to the public hearing, which will be next Monday.
Any comment on that? Anyone on council?
It's a very tedious task, I know. Sorting all that stuff out.
Computer helps.
Are you close to the finish line?
Yes.
These things are late at night, you can all finish, won't you? Okay, all right, no other question on that? Okay, number 3, notification of public hearing on the town's proposed 2018 budget is scheduled for council's regular business meeting on an ordinance tentatively identified as ordinance number 1471, an ordinance setting the real estate tax rate for 2018 and other revenue sources, and setting certain appropriations for the 2018 calendar year.
It's simply an announcement for the upcoming public hearing.
Questions
at
or
our business
comments?
meeting.
Okay? And then we'll review the budget to, well, I guess we'll go first to 409.
Building plans.
Buildings and plants, very brief summary here. It's a good bit less than last year. We have some things that we accomplished this year that are not included for next year's budget. Some things going forward, the amount of time that our Public Works Department spends here varies. We try to guesstimate on projects, some maintenance work, painting and so forth that is going to occur that from time to time we have more. We have a new police chief that you could look at on page 28 who asked for some things to be done down in the police station, made some modifications. Fairly simple, but nevertheless
I'm watching hers.
it took some of our people's time.
Thank you, Bill.
Buildings and grounds, we have used our people to remove landscaping, overgrown and some out-of-shape landscaping from the front, as we had discussed during the course of this year. And we have estimated that the cost of plants, working with Master Gardener Margie Miller, would be approximately $20,000. That's not cast in stone, that's an up to amount. We can find plants at good prices. Margie knows of some places, as does Mark Sabina, and I do too, but we will be able to find a nice display of plants. We have preliminary ideas on that layout. We're gonna go over that again with Margie in the spring. There's also the talk of the sidewalk in front of the town hall. That's not under this budget area, but that is going to affect how we grade that area ultimately, and how this landscaping plan will ultimately look.
What area is it under?
That'll be under Fund 18. That's because it's capital, the sidewalk's capital in nature.
Okay.
Office equipment, that's area is where we have consolidated the how we list our GIS map updates. We consolidated that here to 409 because this program serves all of those who are in the building. The GIS maps serve all of us, so we consolidated all this cost several years ago, so it's $9,500 to update our maps.
That accounts for that differential between that was the biggest line item, I thought, where the reduction was reflected.
The big reduction there, yeah.
Yeah.
That's on 370?
Yes, ma'am.
The
Yes.
GIS.
Yeah.
What layer did we have? I know we got sewers last year. What layer did we get this year?
Oh, too bad Bruce left. Is he gone?
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't we get back to that, Kim? I'm not sure what that
Okay.
is. 'Cause, he's actually working on several.
Okay, I just was wondering what.
Thank you,
what we
yes,
got.
absolutely, we'll get back to you on that though.
Okay.
Reach, remind me, make a note, please. Get a hold of Bruce.
And I noticed you put the AV equipment under this instead of under communication or public. Isn't that the AV equipment under here? I think that's under, is it 260? Is that where that is?
Office equipment.
Is that what that is?
I don't think, Reed, do you have a B, we don't have anything, we spent 18.5 there for building minor equipment. I don't know if that was the AV, let's go back.
Well, I tried to find it under, outreach, community, citizen information, 406, and it wasn't under there.
Yeah, it is under 409.
You moved that under 409, make it part of the building?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Reed.
All right, so that's what that is, 260. Okay.
Yeah, there's pretty much less actually next year we have budgeted for this building and all of our buildings.
Okay.
Okay,
All right, we're
Madam
ready.
Chairman, if we can go to 426?
426, right.
Okay. Recycling is moving along. The major cost for the recycling was the recycling containers. When we migrated to the automated system, we just have some, keep a size of an inventory that makes sense for anybody, any new house and any replacements. And we have costs for leaf bags in here. And we try to estimate, you can see on page 48, our labor costs vary a bit, but that depends on when leaves fall. If they fall over a longer period of time consistently, or if they fall all at once. Actually, it's a little cheaper if they all fall at once. Supplies, cost of supplies are down because of what I said, our inventory is there, we just have to maintain the inventory we have. We keep a small amount of bins for, recycling bins for people that can't use carts. And on the next page, 49, professional services, that consists, this year, we're going to go over budget of the 23,000 because of the work we did on taking care of flood damage. We cut down and had to hire some help on that, and we did some brush recycling. So our cost for the COG, that's where we recycle our leaves, the compost site up in North Park, we call it COG Post for fun. the COG post site is gonna cost us about $20,000 and $7,100 for the brush recycling. And next year, we're holding steady on that number.
Is that site on the MTSA property?
No, it's actually up
Park.
in North Park.
Down from the flag.
Yeah, and there's a
Flagstaff Hill.
Flagstaff.
There's a Lutheran
I
church
had heard
at the
it.
top.
Did we used to do it by the MTSA property?
No, we've been up in the COG site since, I think, since the inception of leaf recycling in 1990.
Yeah, I had heard it was
We've
over
been a
by
steady partner up there.
All right.
And COG has the equipment, we all buy it as a COG, and we chip in to pay for it and pay for the operator every year. That's pretty much it on 426, ma'am.
On page 47, the fourth paragraph down, I think I want to check those dates.
Do you have old dates there? Like, the first date in 2007, should say 2018.
All those dates follow for 17.
No, I think well, whatever that Monday in October, we'll check on that, make sure. Thank you for, I thought we caught that when we updated.
I checked it, it's this year's dates.
It is this year's dates?
It is, it's not
Okay,
next year's
okay,
dates.
we'll make sure that's the.
Or at least Monday is not on October 16th anyway, so.
Okay. Well, we'll check rather than take the time now, we'll make sure we have that changed. Thank you.
Okay on that, everyone?
Ready to move to 400?
Moving to 400.
Backstroke. This is the town council program, a little bit of increase in cost. One thing is we always budget for all council members to attend the various training opportunities, conference opportunities, just in case everybody goes. So we have ample funds to cover that, and also we have replacement of 3 laptops in the rotation come January. That's pretty much the story, everything else is about the same.
Are we replacing them with other computers
Laptops,
or?
3 laptops, unless council would like to talk about going to a different type of piece of technology. You know, and the thing we talked about iPads years ago, like what Steve does oftentimes, jumps on a map, you can see it better on a laptop. But if your preference were to be an iPad, we certainly could do that.
My preference isn't what we got.
A functional laptop.
And so it seems laptops have really come down in price in the last few years because everybody is going to iPads. Why are they still $1,000 or $1,100 a piece?
Well, the ones we're buying are capable of handling, you know, what you guys might see on here. But you know, if we price them out, and
That's a lot. I mean.
they range. You know, you can get them cheaper, but I think.
By the time you buy the software, I bought a couple of those recently, and the ones I bought were far in excess of $1,000 for a variety of reasons. But
For a laptop.
yeah, well, sure.
They vary. I mean, you can get them as low. I've seen 250, 300, but I don't know what
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
firepower
They
they
don't
would
do
have.
as much though.
And we take our IT
Mine doesn't do anything.
guys' regulation.
Mine here.
Yeah,
You mean your computer?
yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta come down and make
You take
sure.
action on that sometime
Okay.
soon, or are you just testing the waters here tonight?
Well, we have money budgeted here. You know, we just if there's a preference for a different type of equipment, or you want us to try to explore something a little less.
We do need to start looking at how we're gonna cut some of this, or do something, because.
Okay, 401, pretty much business as usual, here, no changes. We allocate costs from, cover my salary, Marie, and part of Regis primarily, and occasionally John Bajarski when he works directly for a 401 item. Some scanning, perhaps a small item, $3,000 for scanning for some records. You know, the state's a stickler about records. They don't want us to use the cloud. We heard that at a seminar this year. But should be able to put some records and also store some of the
You mean for
heritage.
backup, they don't want you to use
No, not for the record. For the record, they don't want us to store records on the cloud or on disk or some other form of technology.
Where
They say they want us to
Scanned.
keep the paper.
Well, keep the paper, they don't want any backup at all then.
Or scanning it.
Or scan it.
You have to scan it.
Now, what we've done, in a
Are
lot
you
of
including
cases,
scanning too?
That's what we're paying $3,000 for.
what we're doing is we're scanning some so that we can have records readily available so that we're not just, if we have to keep paper, rather than have people flipping through the same
Right.
pages and destroying old records, ultimately, we ought to have some way to scan it and put the records away.
That's
someplace.
convenience access though, right?
Right. So pretty much business as usual, under that category is not, nothing really to cut, it's pretty basic.
I know I asked last year to, because I know like people like Reach wear many hats, and I think you were gonna get me like what percentage of his time, you know, like he spends 20% of his time doing this, or, because it'll say it, you know, when they're split, it's impossible to figure
Not a
out
problem.
anyway, but
I'll get that
you know
for
what I mean?
Yeah.
So you
Yeah,
can just,
I have that in the spreadsheet anyway for everybody, so.
Just get it out.
No problem.
it's just interesting to
Sure.
see how, just a better understanding of what's going on.
Get it out
Thank
to
you.
council. Paul.
Thanks,
You bet.
thanks, okay, that's it.
Reach 402 is yours.
The only item of note, I think, on 402 is that we will have a new accounting assistant actually for a full year instead of 6 months. So that's the increase in salaries and wages, but other than that, there are no major initiatives in the finance area, and really not much in the way of changes in expenditures.
Everyone okay with that?
If I had a question on the budget summary, would this be the time to ask it? Okay. So I'm looking at this on page 1, and I'm trying to reconcile it with the very front paper here. And I was looking at, like, tax revenue, no, it's the first paragraph under Dear Council, second to the last sentence. Tax revenue, non-tax revenue, and state revenue combined for 14,000.
When you say
You mean
page
on-
one, you're talking about the first page of the, not actually page
No, they're
one.
both, that's what I'm looking at the very first page
Right.
and the very second page.
You mean,
That's
my
14
message?
million, by the way.
The budget
What did I
message, yes.
I said
Oh,
14,000.
yeah,
the
sorry.
second page
Sorry.
of the budget message is.
Well, and the way my math is, this question may go over it pretty simple. But when I added those up, well, when you added them up, it says 14,979,500.
Kim, I'm sorry, but where are you? Where are you?
Very first
Where
page,
you want
flipping
this
it forward.
There's the first page, okay?
And then on page 1, I'm
It's
Right
not
before
numbered.
overview.
yes, it is, keep
Go,
going.
go back to actual page one.
Yeah, keep going down.
Keep going to the actual page
It's
one.
right in front of expenditures.
There's two.
When I added up those three numbers, I came up with 15 million. Is there another number in there? I got 15,902,600.
With three numbers,
It says tax revenue, non-tax revenue, and state revenue. Was there something else in there? That's what this sentence says, but
it's everything,
it's.
everything shy of the 3,134,000 fund balance. We're talking about new revenue there.
Okay, well, it just named those three things, and when I added those three things up, they weren't 14 million, it was 15 million.
If you
Was there something else
If you
in
add
there?
12,287,000
Right,
plus
Yeah, yeah.
1,936,700 plus 755,800.
well, it should be.
I do come out with 14,979,500.
Well, it's a state revenue, I just went by they called it state revenue.
Tax revenue, non-tax revenue, and state revenue.
Right.
Those three categories.
Right, but it's
That's-
not the 17, it's the 16, it's below it. It's 164260. That's what says state revenue.
What I'm trying to
Am I
say
right?
there is that tax revenue,
Yeah,
and then we raise revenues, non-tax revenues.
Right,
and we
right,
have, and
right,
we get
right,
revenue
right.
from the state. Those three are that's our new money, so to speak.
No, I'm just asking if the math is, if under revenue on page 1, the first
Right.
thing it says tax revenue, plus the second thing that says non-tax revenue.
Oh, you're looking at the,
1, 2, 3, 4,
you're looking at
5.
the far right column?
The
Yeah.
far
Should
left
be the
column.
left column, the general fund.
I'm only talking about
Toby's
the
referring
general
only
fund.
to the general fund in his budget message.
Okay, so that's where
Okay,
I got
It's not the total of all
confused.
funds,
It's
it's
not
just the
the
general
total.
fund. Correct, it's just
Okay.
the operating fund.
You know what, let me add,
Okay.
I'll add under, or in the general fund tax revenue, rather so it's not confusing.
Well, yeah, that would be, yeah,
That would be helpful.
that would be helpful to me, yeah,
Okay.
okay.
All right, so, any questions for each?
The other question that I wanted to know is, where is, after we've paid all the bills for 2017, there's money left over, we turn around and dump that back in at the beginning, right?
We keep some in the general fund and then by our policy.
Where is that? What's that called?
Okay, you wanna grab it first?
The fund balance is roughly cash, but it isn't exactly cash. If you're wondering how much cash we have at the end of the year, the fund balance at the end of the year, we still haven't made a transfer to the capital improvements fund. So the fund balance, good way of looking at the fund balance would be, for example, if you've got a $150,000 mortgage on a house, or a $50,000 mortgage on a house worth $150,000, you'd have a fund balance of $100,000. Well, you don't have cash of $100,000, but you have available resources of $100,000. That's what your fund balance is. So if you wanted to know what the cash was, we would actually have to look at the bank statement to see what the cash is at the end of a given year.
Okay.
That the fund balance is the amount of resources we want to keep at the end of the year to cover 2 months of revenue or expenditures, average, whichever is higher, for the last 3 years. So it's the resources we want to keep on hand. It's not necessarily in cash.
Well, that's the unassigned fund balance, is the 2 months.
That's correct.
But that's, looks like it's a different amount from the fund balance, which is under revenue.
Well, the revenue fund balance is the fund balance at the beginning of the year.
Okay,
And then at the bottom is the fund balance at the end of the year.
okay, so this says, fund balance at 1/1/18, that's the beginning of the year. That's
Right.
under revenue.
Right.
All right, and then the fund balance, the unassigned fund at 2,749,000 is, that's not, that wouldn't be that would just be the fund balance for the unassigned fund, because we have more than that.
Right, plus $510,000 committed, plus $30,000 non-spendable.
Okay,
Non-spendable is a good example of fund balance. $30,000 in fund balance, what that represents is postage in our meter, fuel that we have in our tanks. It's not cash on hand, it's assets that we have available to us.
okay.
Okay, ready to move to 403.
403, that is tax collection, or various taxes are collected. Some are collected in-house, some are collected through a contractor, Keystone. Reach, if you have anything specific, I'll chime in if I have something.
Yeah, I think the only thing to note there is that under salaries and wages, there will be some crossover there. Our tax administrator, Linda Goranick, is retiring in January. So deadline was today for applying. We've got approximately 20 applicants, and we're looking to fill the position by mid-December so that that person has about a month to train with Linda before she's done. So there is a little bit of a layover there for a layering of salaries in the first part of 2018. Other than that, there, again, are no changes to the programs. You will note that under enforcement actions, this year the county increased the fee for filing a tax lien from $20 up to $60.
My understanding is they hadn't changed that fee in over 20 years. So they finally made an adjustment. We weren't aware of it until we actually had to file the liens. So it costs 3 times as much now to file a lien, but you get that back when the taxpayer pays off the lien. They're required to pay that fee as well. Other than that, again, with tax collection, there really aren't any differences. Any questions?
Did we pick Keystone Collection Group?
We were required to, as part of the Allegheny North Tax Collection District.
Do we have to use that?
We have to use it,
We
yes.
have to use that.
Yeah, we're
group.
required.
What do we have to pay them, we have to pay them a commission, right?
Right, it's a commission they negotiate with all of the members of the Allegheny North Tax Collection.
Well, all, in total, I mean, it
In
applies
total,
to every,
right.
the same commission applies to all 60 members of
It's
the-
like
of
a
that.
percentage.
Yeah, we have like a 5% vote, I think. So,
A little more now, but it's the commission this year is around 1.42%, I think. I have to check. Which is pretty good when you do that in bulk. That's a good number when you collect in bulk like that. Because they collect about $95 million for the whole tax collection district.
Yeah, they got a good job, they got a good business
Yeah,
going.
they're pretty sharp.
The difference between total revenue and total expenditures. The total revenue is, I'm looking at all the years actually, but,
What page, Josie?
well, the total expenditures is halfway down page 3. And then total revenues at the very bottom of 9. Well, what does that mean exactly? I mean, wouldn't that be the total revenue and total expenditures for the years?
yes,
So, if there's a difference of 2.8 million in 2014, 2.4 million in 2015, 2.5 million in 2016, and 2.3 million in 2017, where's all that money end up?
Where are those numbers?
I made them. I calculated them.
Oh, okay.
So you have to take total revenue from page 9 and subtract total expenditures from page 3,
Okay.
and we're basically at $2.5 million a year.
So that's what the money that I thought that got thrown in the pot. at the
That's what I would have
next
called
year.
thought the reserve was, or
okay, I'm 2000, I'm gonna use 2016 as an example. We've got revenue of 15,168 million, that is, and expenditures of 15,582. So we've got expenditures greater than revenue, so I'm not seeing a surplus there.
Well, that's down to transfers. You're in transfers.
Right, that's transferring money to the capital improvements fund to fund the capital projects.
So the money goes to the capital improvements funds.
Correct, we have a policy that we keep in our fund balance, unassigned, in the general fund, no more than 2 months of the average of revenue or expenditures, whichever is higher over the last 3 years, because there's no reason to keep any more than that there. That is simply to cover any potential cash flow shortfalls. The rest of the money is used to fund our capital projects.
But isn't that part of the balances? Or part
Sure,
of
in
the
the capital
budgeting?
projects fund, you'll see it as transfer in, it's revenue in the capital improvement, or the capital improvements fund.
We're
Fund
gonna go
18
over that next week.
Shows revenue.
We'll go over it next week. All right,
Yeah,
maybe
it's on
we'll
the schedule for
Absolutely.
next week.
figure out a little
Transfers
better
in
next
must
week.
equal transfers out in government accounting, fund-wide. Or government-wide, I should say.
All right, we'll understand it better next week.
And the moment, if we go to 4:06, that John Bajarski has been waiting
Thought we were done.
3 hours and 9 minutes for.
406.
It's 4:06, category he manages.
Okay, 406, John.
We have a number of set items we've used over the years, to which we've added, as we know, within the last year, we've added Facebook and Savvy Citizen to how we interact with our residents. We still manage the aid channel. We have funds that come from the COG that are earmarked that have to be used for some sort of televising, so that aid channel I'm sure there's still some people that are watching TV and to get their information, but we can't, not ready to give that up yet, but I don't think we should. But we put this budget together, and I'll turn it over to John here in a second. We were looking at John and I were talking about some enhancements for our website. And I went to the conference, it was the fall conference, Western Townships and Boroughs Conference, and they, next to Savvy Citizen, who I talked with for a while, there was a sales rep from a company, VTS, John?
VTS.
I'm getting the acronym sometimes, and he had a pretty interesting upgrade system for the website. So I asked John to talk to him, and they talked. And so that kind of launched us into discussing a bit more about what we might want to do with our website. And why don't I turn it over to you, John?
Yeah, so basically, when it comes to the website, you're all familiar with it. It's functional. Survey says most people can find what they need, but it's also antiquated. There's a lot of space on the sides. There's a lot of long drop-down menus. That's not the direction most people are going in right now. I think it was redesigned maybe 2011. The copyright notice at the bottom is accurate. So in terms of like website redesigns, that's a long period of time. So some of the vendors we're looking at right now, we mentioned VTS. They gave us a price right now. Startup cost would be $12,000, and that's migrating everything from our site to the new site and a lot of design work. And then the cost per year would be $2,500, which is on par with GovOffice.
And they would be willing to amortize that startup cost to go to that more exciting system that they have, right?
Correct. They would stretch it out over 3 years. So under a 3-year plan, the cost per year would be $6,500 for those 3 years, and then it would drop down to $2,500 because you're not paying for the startup cost.
So 19,500 instead of 12,000.
No, 12,000 plus maintenance. They don't charge any interest. It's 12,000, so it's 4,000 a year for 3 years.
Oh, that's including
plus
the
maintenance.
monthly
Maintenance.
fee. Okay.
Yep. And then
yearly
John,
fee.
And obviously, there's other vendors too. Another promising company is Revise. They're a Michigan company. Their startup cost is $7,500, and their annual maintenance cost is $1,800, which is actually less than GovOffice. And the sites look good. They were on par with VTS and some of the newer GovOffice sites. And they're also willing to amortize as well. The annual cost there would be $4,300 if we want to go for the 3-year plan. And they also offer the option of a free redesign in 2021. Other place we're looking at, we're still looking at GovOffice. They're traditional, at least the cost that I got from them last year, they do about $125 an hour. So I'm trying to get a better idea from them as far as what kind of functions they can add or change and how much it would cost them to actually do a redesign. So still being looked at right now.
So we're looking at 4 vendors, basically,
Yep.
and I'm not a fan of bringing something to you afterwards. And here we are in the budget review, but because we had put $1,400 for enhancements on our existing site, but I think it's worth looking at an improved site, an improved host. So I think John should, I'd like him to complete that research, and then maybe we could adjust this later on in the budget season, okay? That's all right.
And that's under 450 website and mobile applications?
Yes.
Okay. So that will need to be upped a
That
little
would go up
bit
a
then.
bit, not tremendous amount, but
So can we get our meetings on our channel?
Which channel?
Don't we only just have one, like 99 on
EG
Comcast or
channel?
something?
The EG channels technically ran in that's a different company that handles that right now. That's PEG TV, and NA handles the rest. Now, I've not had any contact with NA in a while. I believe Dave West, who handles televising there, he changed jobs, and
Yes.
I think there's someone else there now, but YouTube's still the best bet right now, but we can, I think, get those on the channel.
For people who don't use YouTube.
Right.
I mean, it's our channel, and we pay so much for it.
oh yeah, and they're
You know,
obligated
it's-
to put it on.
And,
Yeah.
and they're supposed to put it on.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
can we call them and ask them to please do it?
Absolutely, but as far as I know,
It shouldn't
when we're
cost us
paying PEG,
anything.
yeah, that's a free service that NA is offering us, actually broadcasting that. This egged cost, I think, is different. That's just the text-based information.
Yeah, the egg channel is,
Yeah.
it's on it should be on Consolidated
Right.
and Verizon and Comcast. That's the little scroll
Right.
where you just get like a headline. But your point is, of course, we own the channel,
It's ours.
they own the studio,
Yeah.
so let's have the twain meet, okay?
And they don't have to do anything, they
No,
just have
they
to
just
play
have to
it.
get
I
it
mean,
from
we've
them.
recorded
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
I think they can actually download it straight from YouTube, so there's
So-
no moving parts, just let them know they
Right,
find it.
that's what I'm thinking.
They need their chain rung.
There's no way to do it live, is there?
Not with our current system, we would have to get computers here, but YouTube does offer streaming,
So weird I can do it live with this,
you know,
if I wanted to.
different quality.
Yeah.
Can't switch, especially in there, because we have multiple cameras in there.
Okay, all right, well, good, so we can get that on TV then for people.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
perfect,
that's a yes.
good.
And that's pretty much it, I think,
That
John, unless
concludes-
John had anything else he wanted to add.
Public comment?
Public comment? Brian?
Great
you have a
job.
comment?
Brian.
Thank you all for your effort.
Thanks for watching the whole broadcast.
That concludes our finance and personnel committee.
We gotta, we have
Moved
to make a
it.
motion to
Oh,
No, there's no motion.
Adjourn?
get rid of.
no motion.
Chair
Dennis.
adjourned, chair adjourned.
Adjourned.
There we go.
Oh, it's only coming up on 11 o'clock, that's not too